a wealthy entrepreneur found murdered in his waterfront home.
He was laying face down with his hands kind of tucked up under his pillows.
The entire house had been ransacked.
It didn't appear there was any struggle. It didn't look like he saw it coming.
As leads go cold, investigators turn to the victim's loved ones for answers.
Everybody loved Dad. Nobody hated Dad. There were so many feelings. I didn't even believe it.
But the investigation reveals a family man who lived a bachelor's lifestyle.
He enjoyed his life. He enjoyed partying.
It looked as if he had engaged with somebody to essentially set up a date.
Those messages were very clearly talking about money.
And when detectives zero in on a suspect, it leads to a desperate manhunt that will take them over 3,000 miles away.
She liked shiny things. She liked driving around in a Mercedes.
I think it was premeditated, 100%.
I just kept telling her, your best bet is to turn yourself in, because if you're running from something, it's just going to make it so much worse.
March 3rd, 2021, Clackamas County, Oregon. At 11:28 a.m., a 911 call is made from an upscale home on the Willamette River.
How can I help you?
I came over to my boss's house and I found him and he's dead.
Okay. Is he cold to the touch or stiff?
I didn't touch him, but he's kind of full of blood.
The caller, Tony Morrell, says he became concerned for 62-year-old Jimmy Pearson after not hearing from him for several days.
Mr. Merrill was not only his friend, but he also worked for him. He found Mr. Pearson naked, and he had blood all pooling all around his head. As soon as he saw the blood, he got scared, exited the residence, and then called 911.
This call originally was dispatched to Deputy Fredrickson. He's one of our patrol deputies. He responded to the scene. It was a very nice home in a very nice neighborhood. The residence's driveways are gated, so you have to have a code to get into the driveway of the residence. It's a very nice home. It's very large.
Deputy Fredrickson enters the master bedroom, where he finds an unresponsive male victim lying on the bed.
He was laying face down with his hands kind of up over his head, tucked up under his pillows. Deputy Fredrickson could see the blood around his head area on the bed.
A swift search of the bedroom confirms the victim is the owner of the house, Jimmy Pearson.
Deputy Fredrickson did find a wallet on the nightstand, which had an ID card in it, and the ID card appeared to match the deceased person on the bed. Deputy Fredrickson moved one of the pillows to see if there was any firearm. Because the amount of blood, I think he was guessing that it may have been a gunshot wound.
He couldn't determine where the blood was coming from, and he didn't know if it was self-inflicted.
After a preliminary search of the scene, no weapon is located. However, there are signs of what looks like a break-in.
The entire house had been ransacked, drawers opened, things obviously missing, like someone had gone through just about every room and looked through everything.
Homicide detectives quickly arrive, accompanied by the medical examiner.
So one of the things we noticed when we walked into his bedroom is that there was a really pungent smell of decomposition, so we knew he had been dead for several days.
As they were examining the body, they did find what appeared to be a bullet wound to the back of the deceased's head.
Until the medical examiner could conduct their pathology exam, we weren't going to be able to 100% say that he died of a homicide. But we were treating it as a homicide. People, when they commit suicide, don't typically shoot themselves in the back of the head.
There were no weapons. There were a lot of unknowns. So trying to find out when something occurred is one of our first steps. Reaching out to family, friends, anybody that can give us an indication of where they've been, what they've been doing, and who they've been spending time with.
Jimmy Pearson was born August 19, 1957, in Dearborn, Michigan. He was one of 4 siblings, and their home life was anything but perfect.
His dad was Al Pearson. He played professional hockey for the Detroit Red Wings. However, he was an alcoholic, so that put a damper on his mom and his relationship. So his mother ended up divorcing his dad when he was very young.
Faced with raising the children on her own, Jimmy's mother moved them to Oregon in search of a fresh start.
She had 4 kids, so she spent a lot of hours at work, and they pretty much had to fend for themselves.
He saw his mom working all the time, so he thought he could help out. He, at a young age, would be out mowing lawns, doing whatever he could to provide, to bring in money.
By his early 20s, Jimmy was a hard-working, ambitious young man ready to start a family of his own.
I met Jimmy in the summer that I turned 18, and I met him at a houseboat. My sister was dating somebody who was a good friend of Jimmy's. After we started dating, he had opened up Hawkeye Trading Post, buy, sell, trade. That was his first little foot in the door to, being in the pawn shop business.
Jimmy and Sandra married in 1987 and had 2 children together. But his dedication to work put a strain on the relationship.
Jimmy was a good father when he was around because he worked a lot. Like, he would leave in the morning and sometimes not come back until 1 or 2 in the morning. There's not one thing that led to the divorce. It was a lot of different things. It was a mutual agreement that it was better for us to split. However, when we got divorced, we still were friends.
Jimmy lived with his family for a few years until one of his business ventures got him into trouble with the law in 1992.
The DEA came out to our door like at 6 in the morning. They toted Jimmy out of there within the first half hour. They had a warrant for his arrest for manufacturing and growing marijuana.
Jimmy was convicted on drug charges and spent 3 years in prison. When he got out, Jimmy was anxious to reunite with his children and rebuild his pawn business.
He got a deal at a place out in Gladstone, a property. We named it A1 Hawk.
A1 Hawk is a state licensed pawn shop, and we buy and sell goods and also do 90-day collateral loans. So from open to close, we're buying inventory off of customers or we're selling inventory to customers.
As soon as his daughters could see over the counter, they came to work with him.
We would ask him for money, and he would say, well, how many hours have you worked? When I first started, I was very shy and I was timid, and I was scared to go out on the sales floor. I'd ask my dad a question and in fear, like, Dad, what do I say? He's like, just go in there and tell everybody that there's a new sheriff in town, and act like you own the joint.
The business was a success, and Jimmy expanded to 3 locations. By 2021, Jimmy used the considerable wealth he'd earned to spoil his growing family as his daughters had started families of their own.
He didn't flaunt wealth. He didn't come off pretentious. He definitely used his money for fun. He had 2 houses. One was a floating home, one was just on the bank there, and I remember regularly working on that house and just being awestruck, like, how do you attain these properties?
He seemed like he was happy. Jimmy was a selfless person. He wanted it to be known that A1 Hawk wasn't like other pawn shops and to break the stigma behind most standard corporate pawn shops.
But this doting grandfather and entrepreneur has been found dead inside his sprawling riverfront mansion, and investigators are trying to determine why.
There was no firearm located anywhere. There was no shell casing located anywhere. So that led us to believe that, well, one, he couldn't have killed himself.
They did find 2 drink cups in the bedroom that, most people don't drink out of 2 different glasses of the same type of drink. So it would indicate that there was a second person there. One of the detectives went into the bathroom and found some prescriptions with the name Talia McDaniel.
He had his underwear and his socks on the floor, and I think he had his shirt draped over at the edge of the bed, so it appeared as though he had disrobed and gotten into bed.
It was very likely that the person that killed him was someone that was familiar to him. And it didn't appear there was any struggle. It didn't look like Mr. Pearson saw it coming.
Coming up, an old flame becomes a person of interest.
There was this falling out where money and possessions were taken.
And detectives access a crucial piece of evidence.
As we were looking through the ring footage on Mr. Pearson's phone, we found a female getting out of the vehicle and coming to the front door.
After Oregon detectives search 63-year-old Jimmy Pearson's ransacked bedroom, they suspect he was likely robbed and murdered in his own home.
We were aware that he had owned A1 Hawk pawn locations, and so the belief that because he was the owner of these locations that he would potentially have jewelry or cash on hand.
But it surely looked like somebody had gone through a lot of Mr. Pearson's possessions. When we noticed that he had the ring camera outside the front, we knew that it was likely going to capture whoever killed him. If they came in through the front door, we'd be able to see who did it and at what time the homicide occurred. We needed to gain access to Mr. Pearson's cell phone to gain access to the cameras. The issue was that the phone had a pass lock, so we couldn't get into the phone. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
During the search, 3 of Jimmy's associates have gathered in the driveway.
Mr. Merrill told us that after calling 911, he then called Mr. Pearson's attorney, his paralegal. They both came to the scene.
Detectives step outside to speak with them, starting with Tony.
He indicated that he had known Mr. Pearson for well over 20 years.
Mr. Merrill told investigators that the last time he had saw Mr. Pearson was they had gone to a casino.
They had spent some time up there gambling, eating, and in the early morning hours on February 27th, Mr. Merrill left Mr. Pearson at the casino. He said that was the last time that he had communicated with Mr. Pearson.
On March 3rd, he found it odd that he still had not heard from Mr. Pearson, and actually nobody had heard from him in a couple days. So Mr. Merrill decided he wanted to go inside and check to see if Mr. Pearson was okay.
He said he had access to the garage code. He noticed that the dog food dish was empty, or water bowl was empty. Took care of the dog, fed, water, took it out potty, and then he went to Mr. Pearson's room.
After Tony finishes detailing the events leading up to finding his deceased friend, detectives turn to Jimmy's attorney.
I was asking him a myriad of questions about Mr. Pearson's past and about who would want to harm him. Although he didn't try to throw shade, he indicated that there was a bit of a falling out between Mr. Pearson and his daughters over Mr. Pearson's personal life.
He had known Mr. Pearson for a long time. They had become friends. He was now his wills and estates lawyer and had written a will for him recently in which he had essentially disinherited his 2 daughters.
The attorney says Jimmy decided to leave his fortune to himself and another friend rather than family.
He handed me his amended will that had just happened within a couple months prior to that, which to me was a little odd. Although it was suspicious how we were introduced, their cooperation led us to believe that his attorney didn't have anything to do with it. Anything that we needed or requested, they were quick to help us with. We asked her because she knew a lot of Mr. Pearson's affairs. do you know what Mr. Pearson's passcode is? And at first she stated no, but they said, I might be able to locate it. She said one of the people that had access to Mr. Pearson's house was Mr. Pearson's housekeeper, and would come every Monday. Since it was Wednesday at the time, we knew that Monday had just happened.
Investigators place a call to the housekeeper, hoping she might have seen something.
She had been there between the hours of 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. She said she entered the residence through the front door. She has a key Mr. Pearson provided her. She heard loud music coming from the direction of Mr. Pearson's room. She went to go check on Mr. Pearson, opened the door and saw his feet. Thought, oh, he's asleep. I don't want to bother him. So she's the one that actually shut the door, and she proceeded to clean the residence. I asked her, well, while you were there, did anything look odd or out of place or unusual? And the first thing she told me was, hey, you know what? When I was folding clothes, I noticed that there was some women's clothing that I was folding.
Mr. Pearson's housekeeper says it used to be a common occurrence, back when he was dating a woman named Tylea McDaniel.
He had a prior relationship with her, and when Tylea was living with Mr. Pearson, it was very common to see her clothing amongst Mr. Pearson's in the dryer. But that had been about a year prior.
To detectives, the name sounds familiar.
They had found prescription bottles that had belonged to a woman named Tylea McDaniel.
Detectives now aim to track down Ms. McDaniel to determine if she had a motive to harm Jimmy Pearson.
Obviously, that was a name that popped into our periphery as potentially being involved in this.
So when we looked up Mr. Pearson's name, we did find a report where he had claims that he'd been the victim of a burglary. He had listed Tylea McDaniel as stealing from him, and we started to believe that that may be who we needed to find.
The day after Jimmy Pearson was found dead, investigators interview his daughters, Sarah and Tanya Pearson.
They said they believed that he was murdered. And that was... can't even say the feeling. There were so many feelings. I didn't even believe it.
I asked them questions about, hey, tell me about your dad, tell me about your dad's dealings, who he associated with.
Everybody loved Dad. Nobody hated Dad.
Mr. Pearson's daughter's interview was enlightening. They explained why the fallout with their father, and a lot of it had to do with the people he was keeping company with. They didn't like the females that he was around. They described as their feelings were they were potentially escorts.
The only person that came to my mind was Tylea. We started dating a young woman, and I believe she was around 20 years old. We would ask, how did you guys meet? She said it was like in the movie. We were at a grocery store, our carts hit, and then he got my number. She didn't have a job, didn't have a car, didn't have a driver's license. She had nothing. Whether she was nice, great, she's nice. But you're gonna invite this person into your home? Into your business?
Their concern was that she was a bad influence on Mr. Pearson, and that kind of wasn't the type of grandfather that they wanted their children to be around.
As a result, Sarah quit working at the pawn shop, and her suspicions about Tylea grew.
I found out about a month later that my dad thought she took off with a whole bunch of cash and valuables at his house.
There was a report of a theft from this house about a year ago. That case was reported, but no charges were ever filed.
After the robbery, Jimmy broke off the relationship, but the rift between him and his daughters continued to grow.
It had to do with Jimmy feeling like they were trying to take over his life and tell him what to do. He enjoyed his life, he enjoyed partying, and wasn't going to listen to his daughters trying to convince him otherwise.
Despite their problems, Sarah and Tanya tell detectives they were unaware their father had written them out of his will.
They said that we would be getting a call from his lawyer and they would be reading his testimony. When it rains, it pours, and there were so many questions, but my only question was, what happened to my dad?
That day, the medical examiner conducts an autopsy that will answer their question.
It was determined that Mr. Pearson was shot once in the back of the head.
A bullet was removed, and it was identified as a .38 Special Slug.
Now that Jimmy's cause of death is confirmed, investigators are eager to track down the person who pulled the trigger.
This paralegal, she contacted us, provided us the passcode, and when we entered it, thankfully it unlocked his phone. We were able to gain access to Mr. Pearson's text messages and also the Ring camera app.
But none of the messages are from Tylea.
The last read message was from Paris Royal Natasha.
It looked as if he had engaged with somebody to essentially set up a date for someone to come to his house. There was an exchange of messages of, are you here? Or, how far out are you, essentially?
Previous messages spell out the nature of the relationship.
Those messages were very clearly talking about money and them getting together and exchanging money for the time they spent together, which led us to believe that he was paying for her services as an escort. As we were looking through the Ring footage, we found a vehicle arriving at his house and a female getting out of the vehicle and coming to the front door.
Investigators are uncertain who the woman arriving is, but one thing is clear. She is not Tylea McDaniel.
They're two different sized people. They look very different, and it was clear that that was not who we were looking at. Miss McDaniel was no longer really on our radar.
Paris Royal Nistasha, that's not a typical name that we tend to hear. So we had a feeling that that was likely not a real name. So one of the things that we did was we did a search, a law enforcement search of the phone number itself.
We were able to associate that phone number with a Nistasha Rose Tate.
We utilized her driver's license photo, which we were able to use to compare to the person we saw in the Ring camera video.
She was wearing like a dark-colored sweatshirt and jeans and was carrying a bag with her. When she went to the door, Mr. Pearson greeted her, and then they went inside.
Two hours later, around 2:42 a.m., the footage shows Nistasha leaving the home.
She comes back out and has the same red duffel bag in her hand, and it appears to be extremely full and heavy. In her right hand, it looks like she has maybe some reusable shopping bags or something else, not items that she had originally shown up with, but things that came from inside the home.
She makes several trips of carrying bags and boxes to her vehicle, put things in the vehicle.
It appeared she was wearing gloves, which was odd.
It was very clear that by the condition in which she found the house, how it looked like it had been ransacked, that Nistasha was looking for any valuable she could to sell.
This appears suspicious given the larger context of finding Mr. Pearson deceased. At that point, we're attempting to develop as much information about her as possible. Who is she? Are there any law enforcement contacts in the area with her?
A search of police records results in a hit on Nistasha's name.
She had been involved in a traffic stop 12 minutes after leaving Mr. Pearson's home.
The officer noted that there was a purse that was open on the front passenger seat of Nistasha's car, and that there was a revolver handgun that was sitting in plain view.
She explained she was in possession of the gun because she took it from a friend, and that's not legal to transfer a firearm. The firearm was seized and placed into evidence by Milwaukee police.
During the traffic stop, there was no reason to detain her, but to investigators, the implications are clear.
A bullet was found in Mr. Pearson's head. It was removed, and it was identified as a .38 Special Slug. And knowing that Officer Sanchez had seized a .38 caliber revolver from Nistasha the prior night, that immediately led me to believe that that was likely a murder weapon.
Now, the suspect has about a 2-day lead on law enforcement, so they need to make up 2 days very quickly, because the longer this goes on, the more difficult it is going to be able to find her.
Less than 48 hours into their investigation, homicide detectives have landed on a suspect in the murder of Jimmy Pearson, an apparent escort named Nistasha Tate. They send the evidence gathered so far for forensic testing.
We submitted the jacketed bullet that was recovered from Mr. Pearson's head. We submitted the firearm.
Police also obtain an arrest warrant for Nistasha, but they quickly realize she knows how to move under the radar.
The phone numbers that we had previously for her, we knew were no longer good. She was no longer using. She worked as an exotic dancer at a couple different nightclubs, gentlemen's clubs. So we had detectives go to those different locations to see if we could find her vehicle. Unfortunately, her vehicle was not found at any of those places. So that became the primary focus of this investigation, is where is she at?
Social media being such a large part of pretty much everybody's lives these days, they were able to find not only her escort page, but her private social media page.
Nistasha's personal account indicates family members are also looking for her.
One of the messages was left by her grandmother that said something similar to, "What the heck, we were all very worried about you."
When investigators reach out to the grandmother, she puts them in touch with Nistasha's mother.
They learn that Miss Tate's mother is Teresa Tate, and that she would be the person who would know where Nistasha Tate is, if anybody knew.
When investigators went and spoke to Teresa Tate, she painted a pretty sad story of, what Nistasha's life had been. Had a pretty rough upbringing, couldn't read, couldn't write, had been introduced to prostitution at a fairly young age by a friend who she had kind of grown up with, who was a few years older.
She was very honest and upfront about, my daughter is associated with bad people. She's had multiple pimps. She has prostituted herself throughout the country.
She'd been trying to help her really get out of this world for a long period of time. But because Nistasha did not want that help, their communication had broken down.
Teresa said that Nistasha would only tell her very little about where she was. She would never tell her anything specific.
She said she's hidden in the past and laid low, but not really to this extent. Nistasha had spent time in Los Angeles, Minnesota, New York, Florida, Nevada. So really, she could have been anywhere.
When I left my business card and my phone number, and I told her, hey, if her daughter reached out to her, to let me know so that we can try to follow up. And she told us she would.
To aid in their search, detectives enlist the U.S. Marshals Service. They also file subpoenas for Nistasha's social media accounts.
When those records were received, they were also very enlightening.
She stated that she was looking for a gun from somebody. Another one was like almost an invitation to another person, like, hey, can you come join me to do this lick?
In the day before and even the day of Mr. Pearson's death and the time that she was at his house, she was reaching out to multiple people on Facebook talking about a big lick, kind of a big score.
And looking at Nistasha's social media, she liked shiny things. She liked driving around in a Mercedes. She liked to have possessions. It led us to believe that primary motivator for what Nistasha did, it was greed, it was money.
The picture is becoming much more crystal clear that this was a planned event, that this wasn't something that she went there and it was a crime of passion. She intended to do this, and that she was setting herself up to do this to Mr. Pearson.
Coming up, detectives get a tip on Nistasha's location.
Did she say where she was headed?
North Carolina.
And Nistasha's mother makes a confession.
I just kept telling her your best bet is to get your taken care of and turn yourself in.
The hunt for Nistasha Tate continues for a month with no sign of Jimmy Pearson's suspected killer. But on April 7th, 2021, investigators finally get a lead.
They put out this notice to all law enforcement they were looking for this Mercedes. And turns out that Mercedes ends up getting towed in Portland.
They made a call to the impound and said, do not release this vehicle to anybody. We're going to come down and get it.
That's when we were told that someone else had arrived and was trying to get the vehicle released to them. Turns out it was a friend of Nistasha Tate's, and the tow company asked her to stick around, and detectives wanted to talk to her.
It turned out to be a woman named Monique.
Monique claims she bought the car from Nistasha a month prior.
She said she was finna leave town and she sold my car, and I said, I'll take it.
I stated, okay, do you know where Nistasha is now? And she stated that she didn't know where she was, but she and her boyfriend had driven Nistasha to a bus stop on March 11th. Did she say where she was headed?
North Carolina.
But according to Monique, Nistasha had an unexpected change of plans.
She did call me a couple days after she left, and she was in Florida. She was being really weird, and I kept saying, what's wrong? Like, what did you do? She's like, I can't tell you. I just gotta get away. I just gotta get away.
Detectives asked if there was any way that we could get a hold of her to try to track her down. Monique said that there really wasn't any clear way to get a hold of her because her number was changing and she was communicating on a Wi-Fi only phone. Learning that Nistasha Tate was now potentially in Florida definitely added some complexity to the investigation. We couldn't be further away in Oregon from Florida.
2 days later, as detectives work with Florida police to locate Nistasha, her mother calls to request a meeting.
She didn't want us to meet at her residence. She said she didn't want her neighbors to see her talking to the police, so we met her in some parking lot at a shopping center. She informed us that she had been communicating periodically with her daughter, Nistasha, even though she told us she hadn't been hearing from her.
Teresa explains that she's been trying to convince her daughter to turn herself in.
I just kept telling her your best bet is to get your taken care of and turn yourself in, whatever it is. Because if you're running from something, it's just going to make it so much worse.
Hoping to pin down a location, detectives ask Teresa to make contact with Nistasha.
I'd be fine with that, because that's the only way we're going to get her, and she needs to be God at this point. As much as it just feels so against the grain, I know it's the right thing to do for her anyway.
We left, and then a short time after we parted the company, she contacts Deputy Sanders, who was on the U.S. Marshals Task Force, and told her, hey, FYI, she contacted me on the phone. So then we knew that that was a good number that we could use to try to track her.
Once they get that phone number, and they do what's called a trap and trace, and determined that she was in a bus stop not that far from the Tampa Bay Police Department. So then the Tampa Bay police officer went down there and went to the bus stop, and she stands out a little bit. She's got an unusual look to her and some tattoo on her face that's somewhat recognizable.
Nistasha is carrying the same sweatshirt detectives saw her sporting in the footage from Jimmy's doorbell camera.
It was a very distinct hoodie with some words on it, bougie or something along that line. The detectives got to keep an open mind to the possibility of a fight or a struggle.
They covertly took a picture of her in the area and sent it to detectives.
They sent to me, hey, is this her? And I was able to positively identify, yeah, that was her. At that point, I told them, yeah, that's her.
Once they confirmed that that was her, she was, cooperative, they then took her into custody.
I was told she's in custody, and travel arrangements were made for myself and my partner, Detective Michael Zacher, to fly out to Tampa, Florida immediately.
We went to an interview room and Nistasha was brought to us.
I would like a court-appointed lawyer.
I just want you to be aware that once we leave, that's basically your opportunity to tell us what happened, until trial happens.
Yeah, I'd still like an attorney.
Nistasha is charged with first-degree robbery and second-degree murder. While she's being extradited back to Oregon, Jimmy's family learns of the arrest.
We were so excited. Like, it was like we won the lottery.
They did give us the name, and then we, started looking it up because we'd never seen her before. She had 2 tattoos on her forehead.
There's no way. Dad hated tattoos. Dad did not associate with those kind of people, and there's just no way. We didn't believe it.
After a month-long investigation, 23-year-old Nistasha Tate has been charged for the murder of Jimmy Pearson. As prosecutors prepare the case for trial, the evidence against her continues to grow.
All of the evidence from the ballistics are all indicating the gun that was in her car 12 minutes after she left the house is the gun that caused his death.
Prosecutors believe the shooting was part of a premeditated plan.
She, as the evidence would indicate, was influenced and manipulated and trafficked in her past. And this was her one opportunity to turn things around and take control on her own. But she needed money to do that.
But as the court date approaches, Nistasha decides to make a deal instead of going before a jury.
If we were to go to trial, we might not be able to prove the first-degree murder. Since we don't have any eyewitnesses as to what actually happened in there, it's all circumstantial evidence. We came to agreement that she would plead to the second-degree murder, which is also a true life sentence, but with consideration of parole after 25 years.
We said that we would be fine with doing that plea if she would give us a statement as to what happened and how it happened and why it happened.
In December 2021, Nistasha gives Jimmy's family what they asked for.
Her statement was that she had been up a few nights on a binger, drinking and doing drugs, and that when she had gotten over there, they had a drink, and then they had went to the room and had a drink in there, and then she was going to give him a back massage, and she reached down into her bag and pulled out a gun, and he moved and it went off. And then she panicked and didn't know what to do.
She claims that it was an accident, yet she robbed him still and fled. If it was truly an accident, you probably would have made different choices.
She she was looking for a gun. It's not self-defense. It's not an accident. It's something that was motivated by money and greed.
I don't believe it was even the truth of actually how things went down. I think it was premeditated, 100%.
She took away my dad. She took away my best friend, the one that I looked up to, my kids' grandfather that they'll never get to know. She took away our future with him. And yeah, it's horrible. Something that you can't get back. Sometimes I think about setting up a time to go and see her in prison and ask her for myself face to face. But then I go back and don't want to give her that time of day. Maybe someday I will.
Jim should be remembered as someone to aspire to on so many levels. As a father figure, as an entrepreneur, a business owner, there are a lot of outstanding qualities one would aspire to.
Jimmy was a truly compassionate and kind soul and giving. His daughters that have now taken over A1 Hawk, they completely live by his life with everything. The businesses ran the same exact way that Jim ran it, even listening to the same radio station for the past 8 years.
My sister and I having sticking together, and as much as we, it's hard, especially both being hurt, that we just have to stick together. Dad is still teaching us from up above. We think about all of the good memories that we had with our dad. He will never be forgotten. I don't think that there.
New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. The tape begins with breathing. Not words, not movement, just breath, uneven, restrained, like someone trying to stay quiet in a room that isn't safe. It drags across the static, fragile, almost swallowed by the hiss of old magnetic tape. Then a soft click. Silence stretches too long. And just when it feels like nothing will come, a voice emerges, thin, distant, barely there. I didn't mean for her to disappear. Then it cuts. No name, no explanation. Just that sentence suspended in time. For 34 years, no one heard it. The tape was logged, sealed, and buried in evidence storage, tagged under a case that had already been given up on. A cold case. One of hundreds. Maybe thousands. Its label had faded to near illegibility. Riverside, female, unidentified, 1987. And like everything else in that room, it was forgotten. Until it wasn't. Because in New York, nothing truly disappears. It just waits. Winter, 1987. The city moved differently back then. Slower in some places. More dangerous in others. Riverside Park sat in that uneasy middle, beautiful in daylight, but after dark, it belonged to something else. The lights didn't reach far. The river swallowed sound. And the wind carried things you couldn't quite explain. At 6:42 in the morning, a jogger cut through the lower path near the Hudson and noticed something that didn't belong. A coat. Dark wool. Women's. Neatly folded on a bench facing the water, as if it had been placed there with intention. Not dropped. Not forgotten. Arranged. There were no footprints visible in the frost around it. No signs of struggle. No disturbance in the gravel. Just that coat, waiting. Inside the pocket, police found 3 things. A subway token. A crumpled diner receipt from Midtown, time-stamped 11:18 p.m. And a torn piece of paper with a name written in blue ink. Evelyn Cross. That name became the headline within hours. Woman vanishes without trace. Riverside mystery deepens. She was 26 years old, a freelance illustrator. Lived alone in a small, rent-controlled apartment on West 83rd Street. No criminal history. No known threats. No obvious reason to disappear. Neighbors described her in the same careful way people describe someone they barely know. Quiet. Polite. Private. The kind of person you pass in the hallway without remembering their face. But someone remembered her that night. At the diner listed on the receipt, A waitress recalled Evelyn clearly. Not because of who she was, but because of how she behaved. She looked off, the waitress said later, like she didn't want to be there. Evelyn had ordered black coffee. No sugar, no cream, and a slice of lemon pie she barely touched. She kept glancing at the entrance, fingers tapping the edge of the plate, eyes locked on the door every time it opened. Waiting, or dreading. The waitress couldn't tell which. Evelyn left just before midnight. She paid in cash. Exact change. Didn't finish the pie. Didn't look back. That detail stayed buried in the file. It didn't make headlines. It didn't lead anywhere. But it mattered, because it meant she had somewhere to be, or someone to meet. The next sighting came from a taxi driver who picked up a woman matching Evelyn's description 3 blocks from the diner. He remembered her because she didn't speak the entire ride. Not one word. She gave me an address near Riverside, he told investigators. Didn't even look at me when she got out. Time of drop-off, 12:03 a.m. Temperature that night hovered just above freezing. Too cold to linger. Too cold to wander. Which meant she went there for a reason. Then there was the third witness. A man most people ignored. A homeless veteran who slept near the park benches. He told police he saw a woman standing by the water sometime after midnight. Said she was alone at first. Then she wasn't. There was someone else, he insisted. Didn't see his face. Just there. Detectives pressed him for details. Height, build, anything. But the man shook his head. It wasn't like that, he said. It was more like he was already there. That statement didn't make sense. So it was dismissed. Filed away. Forgotten. Because investigations don't run on instincts. They run on facts. And there were none. Evelyn Cross vanished without a sound. No body was ever recovered. No signs of violence. No ransom note. No confirmed suspects. Just absence. Her apartment told the same story. Nothing broken. Nothing stolen. Sketchbooks left open across her table. Pencil still resting where her hand had last been. A cup of coffee gone cold beside it. As if she had stood up mid-thought and never returned. Her answering machine held 2 recordings. The first was ordinary, a client asking about a deadline. The second was not. 12 seconds of silence. At least, that's what detectives believed at the time. They logged it as accidental. Background noise. Nothing useful. They were wrong. Weeks passed. Then months. Leads dried up. The media moved on. Another disappearance in a city that had learned how to forget. Evelyn Cross became a file number. Another cold case. Until decades later, someone decided to listen again. In 2021, a newly formed cold case unit began reopening unsolved files from the late 80s. Technology had changed. Methods had evolved. Things that once sounded like silence could now be dissected, amplified, understood. Detective Marcus Hale wasn't assigned the case. He chose it. He would later say it was the tape that drew him in. Something about it felt incomplete, like a sentence cut off before the truth could surface. When the original recording was pulled from storage, even the evidence technician hesitated before handing it over. The casing was brittle, the label almost gone. Hale didn't care. He played it immediately. Once, twice, 3 times. And on the third, he heard it. Not the voice, the breathing. There were 2 patterns. One uneven, nervous, shallow. The other steady, controlled, deliberate. Someone else had been there. The realization hit like a crack through glass. Because if someone else had been in that room when the message was recorded, then Evelyn hadn't been alone. Which meant this wasn't a disappearance. It was something else entirely. The case was reopened. Every detail re-examined. Every assumption questioned. Old witness statements were pulled. Timelines rebuilt. Evidence reprocessed with modern techniques. And almost immediately, inconsistencies began to surface. The timeline didn't hold. Phone records, overlooked for decades, revealed a call placed to Evelyn's apartment just hours before she left for the diner. Origin, a public payphone. Untraceable. Duration, 3 minutes, 42 seconds. Too long for a wrong number. Too precise to ignore. That call changed everything, because it meant Evelyn didn't wander into Riverside Park by accident. She was directed there. The diner. The taxi. The park. It wasn't coincidence. It was sequence. And sequences imply planning, which brought investigators back to the coat. Folded, placed, left behind like a marker. It wasn't panic. It wasn't chaos. It was intention, almost like a message. But if it was a message, no one had understood it. Until January 14th, 2022, a man walked into a precinct in Queens just after 9 p.m. No appointment, no hesitation, no lawyer. He approached the desk and said a single sentence. "I know about the woman in Riverside Park." At first, it sounded like every other false lead, until he said her name, Evelyn Cross. And then he said something that froze the room. She folded her coat before she went down to the water. That detail had never been made public. Not in 1987. Not in any report. Not anywhere. Detective Marcus Hale was called in immediately. The man identified himself as Daniel Mercer. 58 years old. No criminal record. No history of violence. No obvious connection to Evelyn Cross. Just another face in a city of millions. But he knew too much. Hale sat across from him in a narrow interrogation room, studying every movement, every pause. Mercer didn't look like a man trying to lie. He looked like a man who had been waiting. "I didn't kill her," Mercer said before any question was asked. The words came too fast, too rehearsed. Hale didn't respond. He let the silence stretch, because silence has weight, and people break under it. Mercer shifted slightly. His hands tightened. "I was there," he added. "That night." The air in the room changed. "Why come forward now?" Hale asked. For the first time, Mercer hesitated. Not long. Just enough. "Because I heard it," he said quietly. "Heard what?" "The tape." Hale's expression didn't change. "What about it?" Mercer swallowed. His voice dropped. She wasn't alone. There was the detail no one outside the investigation could know. The detail that turned suspicion into something far more dangerous. Hale leaned forward slightly. "Daniel, start from the beginning." Mercer nodded. But instead of speaking, he leaned back, eyes drifting somewhere distant, past the walls, past the present, back into something he hadn't touched in decades. Back to 1987. Back to the river. Back to the moment everything changed. When he finally spoke again, his voice was different. Less controlled. Fractured. "I wasn't supposed to be there." And with that, the past, long buried, carefully ignored, began to surface. Not as memory, but as something unfinished. Something waiting. Something that had never stopped breathing. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. "I wasn't supposed to be there." The words hung in the interrogation room. Thin but heavy, like something that had been waiting decades to be released. Detective Marcus Hale didn't interrupt. He didn't move. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to fade into the background as Daniel Mercer stared past him, eyes locked somewhere far beyond the present. Back to a night that had never really ended. "It was cold," Mercer said finally, his voice quieter now, less controlled. "Colder than I expected. The kind of cold that makes everything feel sharper. Louder, even when it's quiet." Hale let him continue. "I used to walk there sometimes," Mercer added. "Riverside. Late. After work. It was empty. No one asks questions when you're alone in a place like that." A pause. But that night wasn't empty. The air in the room tightened. Mercer leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table, hands clasped together like he was trying to hold something in place. "I saw her before she saw me," he said, standing near the bench. The coat was still on her then. Hale's eyes flicked briefly to the file in front of him, but he didn't open it. He didn't need to. Every detail Mercer was giving matched too closely, too accurately. "She looked nervous," Mercer continued. "Not scared. Not yet. Just waiting. Like she wasn't sure if she should stay or leave." "Did she see you?" Hale asked. Mercer shook his head slowly. "No. I stay back, near the trees. I didn't want to be seen." "What?" Another pause. This one longer. "I don't know," Mercer said, but it didn't sound like the truth. "Habit, maybe." Hale didn't push. "Not yet." "Then what happened?" he asked. Mercer inhaled slowly, like the next part required more effort. "She checked her watch. Twice. Maybe 3 times. Then she took off the coat. Hale's gaze sharpened. She folded it. Mercer added almost automatically, carefully, like it mattered. The detail landed again. Precise. Intentional. She placed it on the bench, he said. Smoothed it out with her hands. Then she just stood there. Waiting. Mercer nodded. Yeah, waiting. The room fell quiet for a moment. Hale could feel the shape of the story forming, but there were gaps. Too many. And the other person? Hale asked. Mercer's fingers tightened slightly. He was already there, he said. The same phrase. The same impossible wording the homeless witness had used decades earlier. Hale leaned in. What do you mean already there? Mercer's eyes shifted, unfocused. I didn't see him arrive, he said. 1 second she was alone. The next she wasn't. That's not possible. I know how it sounds. Mercer snapped suddenly, the first hint of emotion breaking through. I'm telling you what I saw. Silence again. This time it pressed harder. Describe him, Hale said. Mercer hesitated, then shook his head. I couldn't. Not really. He was wrong. Hale didn't react outwardly, but the words stayed in the air. Wrong. In what way? Mercer exhaled sharply, frustrated. I don't know how to explain it, he said. He was there, but not clear. Like when you look at something out of focus. You know it's a person, but you can't lock onto the details. A shadow? No, Mercer said quickly. Not a shadow. He had shape, movement. I just couldn't see him properly. Hale studied him. People lie in different ways. Some over-explain. Some avoid detail. Mercer was doing neither. He was describing something he genuinely couldn't process. What do they do? Hale asked. Mercer swallowed. They talked. About what? I couldn't hear everything. The wind, the distance, he shook his head. But she sounded upset. How upset? Not screaming. Not arguing like a fight. It was quieter than that. Like she was trying to understand something. And him. Another pause. I don't remember his voice, Mercer said slowly. That's the part that doesn't make sense. Hale's brow furrowed. You saw him. You saw them talking. But you don't remember his voice? Mercer nodded. I remember hers, he said. I remember every word she said. But him? Nothing. It's like the sound wasn't there. The room felt smaller now. Tighter. What did she say? Hale pressed. Mercer closed his eyes briefly, as if pulling something fragile from memory. She said, this isn't what you promised. Hale didn't move. She said it twice, Mercer added. The second time louder, like she was losing patience or control. And then Mercer's jaw tightened. She stepped closer to him, he said. Too close. Like she didn't understand what she was standing in front of. A long silence followed. And then she stopped. Mercer whispered. Stop. Completely. Like something had changed. Hale leaned forward slightly. What changed? Mercer opened his eyes. Fear was there now. Clear. Undeniable. She realized, he said. Realized what? Mercer shook his head slowly. I don't know. But whatever it was, it hit her all at once. His voice dropped further. She stepped back. Just one step. But it was enough. You could see it on her face. See what? Regret. The word landed heavy. And then Hale asked quietly. Mercer didn't answer right away. His breathing had changed. Slower. Deeper. Like he was back there again. She turned, he said eventually. Not to run. Just to leave. Like maybe she thought she still could. Hale didn't interrupt. But she didn't get far. Mercer continued. What happened? Mercer's hands trembled slightly now. The air changed, he said. Hale's expression hardened. Daniel, I know how it sounds. Mercer cut in, voice sharper now. I know, but I'm telling you exactly what I remember. Then explain it. Mercer struggled for words. It got heavy, he said finally. Like pressure. Like the space around them wasn't normal anymore. That's not evidence, Hale said flatly. I'm not giving you evidence, Mercer shot back. I'm giving you what happened. The tension snapped tight between them. Hale held it, then let it ease. Go on, he said. Mercer exhaled slowly. She stopped moving, he said, like she couldn't, like something was holding her in place. And the man, Mercer's eyes flicked up. It didn't move much, he said, just one step forward. And then Mercer hesitated, for longer this time, long enough that Hale could feel the story reaching something critical. She said something else. Mercer said quietly. What? Mercer looked down at his hands. She said, please don't do this. The room went still. And then Mercer's voice dropped to almost nothing. And then she was gone. Hale didn't blink. Gone how? Mercer shook his head. I don't know, he said. 1 second she was there, and the next. He snapped his fingers once. Sharp. Empty. Nothing. Hale stared at him. People don't vanish. Not like that. There's always something. A body. A trace. A mistake. Where did she go? Hale demanded. I don't know. Mercer said again, louder this time. I swear I don't know. What did the man do? Mercer's breathing picked up slightly. He just stood there, he said, for a few seconds. Maybe longer. I couldn't tell. And then he turned. Hale leaned in. Toward you. Mercer nodded. Slowly. Yes. The word barely escaped his lips. Did he see you? Another pause. Long. Heavy. I think so, Mercer said. Hale's voice dropped. You think or you know? Mercer swallowed hard. I felt it, he said, like he was looking directly at me, even though I couldn't see his face. The room felt colder now. What did you do? Hale asked. I ran, Mercer said immediately. I didn't wait. I didn't look back. I just ran. And the coat. Mercer blinked, confused for a moment. Then it clicked. She had already folded it, he said. Before everything. Hale sat back slightly. Processing. Every detail Mercer gave aligned with the fragments from 1987. Too perfectly. Which meant one of two things. Either Mercer was telling the truth, or he had access to information no one else did. Why didn't you come forward back then? Hale asked. Mercer didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than ever. Because I thought I imagined it, he said. Because no one would believe me. And now? Mercer looked up, straight at Hale. Because I heard the tape, he said. The breathing. Mercer nodded. There were two, he said. Hers and his. Hale didn't speak. And I realized something. Mercer continued. What? Mercer's expression shifted. Not fear this time. Something worse. He was closer than I thought, he said. Hale's stomach tightened slightly. What do you mean? Mercer leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't the only one watching. Silence swallowed the room whole. Because if that was true, then the case hadn't just been about Evelyn Cross. It had never been just about her. And whatever happened that night on the edge of the river had left more than one witness behind. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. I wasn't the only one watching. The sentence didn't just land. It lingered like something unfinished, something that refused to settle. Detective Marcus Hale didn't respond immediately. He let the silence expand, filling every corner of the interrogation room, pressing against Mercer until it demanded more. Because statements like that don't exist on their own. They point somewhere. They lead somewhere. Who else? Hale asked finally, his voice controlled, but sharper now. Mercer didn't answer. His eyes drifted again, not unfocused this time, but searching, like he was trying to decide how much of the truth he could survive saying out loud. I don't know, he said at last. Hale's expression didn't change. That's not good enough. I'm not hiding anything, Mercer snapped, but the edge in his voice wasn't anger. It was strain. I didn't see anyone. Not clearly. But you felt it. Mercer hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he said. Like the space wasn't empty anymore. Like there was something behind me. Another person? I don't know. Mercer repeated, louder this time, frustrated. It didn't feel like a person. The room tightened again. Hale leaned back slightly, studying him. Mercer wasn't deflecting. He wasn't constructing a story on the fly. If anything, he looked like someone trying to hold on to fragments that didn't want to stay together. Let's go back, Hale said. After she disappeared. After you ran. Mercer exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping a fraction. I didn't stop, he said. Not until I was 3, maybe 4 blocks away. I don't remember exactly. I just know I couldn't breathe. Did anyone see you? I don't think so. You didn't call the police. It wasn't a question. Mercer shook his head. No. What? That pause again. Longer this time. Because I knew what it sounded like, Mercer said quietly. A woman disappears into thin air. A man no one can describe. It doesn't make sense. So you said nothing? I try to forget it, Mercer corrected. That's not the same thing. Hale didn't argue. Because people don't just forget things like that. They bury them. And you never went back? Hale asked. Mercer hesitated, then shook his head. No. Another lie. Not obvious. Not loud. But Hale caught it. The slight delay. The shift in tone. The way Mercer avoided eye contact for just a fraction too long. You're sure? Hale pressed. Mercer looked up, defensive now. Yes. Hale let it go. For now. Let's talk about the tape, he said instead. Mercer stiffened slightly. You said you heard it. I did. Where? Mercer hesitated again. A news segment, he said, about the case being reopened. That tape wasn't released to the public, Hale said flatly. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Mercer's breathing changed again. I heard something like it, he corrected, but the damage was already done. Hale leaned forward. Daniel, you're going to want to be very careful here. Mercer didn't respond. Because right now, Hale continued, you're telling me you have knowledge of evidence that has never been made public. Evidence that was locked away for over 3 decades. Another pause. Do you understand what that means? Mercer swallowed. It means you think I'm lying. No, Hale said quietly. It means I think you're connected. The words settled between them. Connected. Not witness. Not bystander. Something closer. Something more dangerous. I told you. I didn't kill her, Mercer said again, but this time the words felt weaker. Less certain. Hale didn't challenge it. He didn't need to. Then help me understand, he said. Because right now, nothing about your story lines up cleanly. Mercer's jaw tightened. I'm telling you everything I remember. No, Hale said calmly. You're telling me pieces. The truth. And Mercer knew it. The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was building. Let me ask you something, Hale said after a moment. The man you saw, the one you couldn't describe, did you ever see him again? Mercer's reaction was immediate. Too immediate. No. Hale watched him carefully. You didn't even hesitate that time. Because I know the answer. Do you? Hale asked. Mercer didn't respond. And that was answer enough. Hale shifted slightly in his chair. Daniel, what if I told you there were other cases? Mercer's eyes flicked up. Small movement, but enough. Other disappearances, Hale continued. Same time period. Same area. Same lack of evidence. Mercer didn't speak, but something changed in his expression. Recognition. You're not surprised? Hale said. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't do that. Hale cut in sharper now. Not now. Mercer looked away. Too late. 3 cases, Hale said, his voice steady, deliberate. 1985, 1986, 1987, all within a 2-mile radius of Riverside Park. All unsolved. All with one thing in common. Mercer's breathing slowed. Controlled. But not calm. No witnesses, Hale said. No bodies. No signs of struggle. A beat. Just absence. The word echoed. Because it fit too well. Mercer's fingers curled slightly against the table. You think it's the same person, he said quietly. I think there's a pattern, Hale replied. And I think you're standing right in the middle of it. That's not possible, isn't it? Hale reached down and finally opened the case file. Paper shifted. Photographs slid across the table. Black and white images, grainy, aged but clear enough. 3 women. 3 faces. 3 names. Hale tapped the first. Lena Hart. Missing 1985. The second. Caroline Weiss. Missing 1986. Then Evelyn. 1987. Mercer stared at the photos. Too long. You recognize them, Hale said. It wasn't a question. Mercer shook his head slowly, but his eyes didn't move. Another tell. Look at me, Hale said. Mercer didn't. Daniel. Nothing. Look at me. Mercer finally did. And the fear was undeniable now. I've seen her before, Mercer said suddenly, his voice cracking slightly. Hale didn't react outwardly. Which one? Mercer hesitated, then pointed. Not at Evelyn. At the second photo. Caroline Weiss. Where? Hale asked. Mercer shook his head. I don't know, he said. Just somewhere. That's not helpful. I'm trying, Mercer snapped. You think I want this? Hale leaned back slightly, letting the tension settle. No, he said. I think you've been running from it. The room went quiet again. Different this time. Less confrontational. More inevitable. Daniel, Hale said, softer now. What if that night wasn't the first time you saw him? Mercer froze. Completely. The question hit exactly where it needed to. I told you. What if it wasn't? Hale pressed. Silence. Mercer's breathing grew uneven again. Faster. Shallower. Like the tape. Like the beginning. You don't understand, Mercer said finally. Then help me. Mercer shook his head. No, you really don't. Try me. A long pause followed. Long enough that it felt like Mercer might shut down completely. Or walk out. Or say nothing else. But then, I saw him before that night, Mercer said. Barely above a whisper. Hale didn't move. Where? He asked. Mercer's hands trembled slightly again. Different places, he said. Not like that night. Not clear. Just glimpses. Glimpses of what? Mercer struggled for the words. Of someone who shouldn't be there, he said. Hale's expression hardened. Start being specific. I can't, Mercer said. That's the problem. I can't remember details. Just the feeling. That's not enough. It's all I have. The frustration was real now. Raw. And every time, Mercer continued, it was the same. You'd notice him for a second, and then he'd be gone. Like your brain just skipped over it. Hale said nothing. Because for the first time, the story wasn't just strange. It was consistent. Consistent with something they hadn't considered. Why didn't you tell anyone? Hale asked. Mercer laughed once. Short. Empty. Who do you tell that to? He said. Who believes that? Hale didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. No one. Until now. And the other women? Hale asked. Lena. Caroline. Mercer's gaze dropped back to the photos. I don't know, he said. But if it's the same, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Because if it was the same, then Evelyn Cross hadn't been an isolated case. She had been part of something ongoing. Something deliberate. Something that had been happening for years. And you think he's still out there? Hale asked quietly. Mercer looked up. Carefully. No, he said. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. No. Mercer shook his head. And this time, there was no hesitation. No uncertainty. I think he never left. The words settled into the room like a weight that refused to lift. Because if that was true, then this wasn't a case about the past. It was something else. Something ongoing. Something unresolved. And whatever had happened on that cold night in 1987 hadn't ended there. It had just been waiting for someone to notice. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. I think he never left. The words didn't echo. They settled, heavy and unmoving, like something that had always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. Detective Marcus Hale didn't respond right away. He watched Daniel Mercer closely, measuring the silence, letting it stretch just long enough to expose whatever might break through it. Because statements like that don't belong in isolation. They attach themselves to something real, or something hidden. Hale closed the case file slowly, fingers resting on the worn edge of the folder as he studied Mercer's face. No immediate signs of deception. No shifting eyes, no defensive posture. Just exhaustion, and something deeper beneath it, something that hadn't been resolved. People don't just stay hidden for 34 years, Hale said finally. Mercer gave a faint, humorless smile. That's assuming he's a person. The room cooled again. Not physically, but perceptibly. Hale didn't entertain that line of thinking. Not yet. Let's stay grounded, he said. Facts. Movements. Evidence. Mercer nodded, but the doubt remained in his eyes. Because what he had seen didn't fit into any category Hale could write into a report. And both of them knew it. After you ran, Hale continued. After that night, did anything change? Mercer hesitated. That hesitation again. Smaller this time, but still there. Yes, he said. Hale leaned forward slightly. Ow! Mercer looked down at his hands. I started noticing things, he said. Things I hadn't before. Be specific. Another pause. Gaps, Mercer said. What kind of gaps? In time, Mercer replied. Moments where I couldn't account for where I'd been. Nothing major. Minutes maybe, sometimes less. Hale's expression tightened. And you think that's connected? I don't think, Mercer said quietly. I know. That's not evidence. I'm not trying to prove anything, Mercer said, voice rising slightly. I'm telling you what happened to me. Hale let the tension rise, then settle. Did you seek medical attention? He asked. Mercer shook his head. No. Why not? Because I didn't want to know what it meant. Honest. Too honest. Hale shifted slightly in his chair. Did anyone else notice? He asked. No, Mercer said. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. Friends? Family. I kept to myself. That tracked. A man who isolates doesn't have to explain what doesn't make sense. Let's go back to the scene, Hale said. Riverside, 1987. Mercer's shoulders tensed again. I told you everything I remember. No, Hale said calmly. You told me what stood out. Now I want everything else. Mercer didn't respond. The details you think don't matter, Hale added. Those are the ones that do. A long pause followed. Then, there was a sound, Mercer said. Hale didn't interrupt. Not during, Mercer clarified. After she disappeared? Mercer nodded. What kind of sound? Mercer frowned slightly, trying to pin it down. Like water, he said. But not the river. Not waves. Then what? I don't know, Mercer admitted. It was softer, closer, like it was coming from right where she had been standing. Hale's mind worked through possibilities. Movement in the water. Something entering. Something leaving. Did you see anything? He asked. Mercer shook his head. No, that's the problem. I heard it, but there was nothing there. Hale wrote something down. Not because he believed it, but because details like that sometimes connect later, in ways no one expects. Anything else? He asked. Mercer hesitated, then nodded slowly. The bench, he said. Hale looked up. What about it? Mercer swallowed. It was wet. Hale's pen stopped. Wet how? I don't know, Mercer said. It hadn't rained. The ground wasn't wet. Just the bench. And the coat. Dry. That didn't make sense. It didn't fit. Hale's jaw tightened slightly. Are you sure? Yes. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Which made it worse. Because inconsistencies like that don't appear without reason. They point somewhere. Or they hide something. Daniel, Hale said carefully. Why didn't you mention that earlier? Mercer looked confused. I didn't think it mattered. Hale didn't respond. Because that was exactly the kind of detail that matters most. The kind people overlook. The kind that changes everything. The interrogation paused shortly after. Not because they were finished, but because Hale needed distance. Needed to think. Outside the room, the precinct felt different. Brighter. Louder. Grounded in reality in a way that the conversation inside hadn't been. Hale walked straight to the evidence division. The Riverside file was already open, photographs spread across a metal table under harsh fluorescent light. He studied them again. The bench, the coat, the surrounding ground. In the original photos, the bench looked ordinary. Dry. Unremarkable. But photographs don't capture everything. Especially not in 1987. Where's the physical log? Hale asked. An evidence technician handed over a thin folder. Minimal documentation. Standard for the time. But one line caught his attention. Bench surface, moisture detected. Source unknown. Hale read it twice. Then a third time. Because it had been there all along. Ignored. Dismissed. Just like everything else that didn't fit. He closed the file slowly. Patterns weren't just forming. They were aligning. And that made Mercer's story harder to dismiss. Not easier. Hale moved next to the audio lab. The tape had already been digitized, cleaned, enhanced. He listened again, this time differently. Not for voices. For everything else. The breathing came first. 2 patterns. Confirmed. Then the faint hum of the room. The subtle distortion of aged tape. And then, there, barely audible. A sound beneath the sound. Soft. Rhythmic. Not mechanical. Not environmental. Something else. Hale leaned closer, replayed it, again and again, until it became clear. It wasn't static. It wasn't interference. It was liquid, moving, subtle, contained. His stomach tightened slightly, because Mercer had described it, without hearing this version of the tape, which meant one thing. He had been there, or he had access to something no one else did. Hale stepped back from the console. The room felt smaller now, more confined, because the case wasn't just reopening. It was changing shape, and not in a way that made sense. Back in the interrogation room, Mercer sat exactly where Hale had left him, still, waiting, like he knew the questions weren't over, like he knew they were just beginning. Hale stepped inside, closed the door behind him, didn't sit right away. Instead, he placed a photograph on the table. The bench. Was this it? He asked. Mercer glanced down, nodded immediately. Yes. Hale slid another document beside it. The evidence log. Mercer read the line. His expression shifted. You see it, Hale said. Mercer nodded slowly. I wasn't imagining it, he said. No, Hale replied. You weren't. The words hung there. Because confirmation changes everything. It turns uncertainty into something real. Something that can't be ignored. Hale finally sat down. Daniel, he said, voice steady. I need you to think very carefully. Mercer looked up. That night, before you left, did you notice anything else out of place? Mercer didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted again. Back to the river. Back to the cold. Back to something that hadn't let go. And then, yes, he said quietly. Hale didn't move. What was it? Mercer's voice dropped. The water. Hale's expression didn't change. What about it? Mercer swallowed. It wasn't moving. Silence. Thick. Unforgiving. Hale leaned forward slightly. The Hudson River doesn't stop moving. I know, Mercer said. That's why I remember it. The room seemed to narrow around them. Every sound outside fading into nothing. Daniel, Hale said carefully, are you telling me the river was still? Mercer nodded. Yes. How long? I don't know, Mercer admitted. Long enough to notice. Long enough to feel wrong. Hale sat back slowly, because now it wasn't just the man, or the disappearance. It was the environment itself, the space, the moment. Everything about that night was starting to break away from explanation, and that made it dangerous. Not just unsolved, unstable. Why come forward now? Hale asked again, but this time differently. Not as a challenge, as a necessity. Mercer met his eyes. Because I don't think it stopped, he said. The answer came without hesitation, without doubt. Hale held his gaze. What hasn't stopped? Mercer leaned forward slightly, and for the first time since the interrogation began, he looked certain. Whatever took her, he said, it's still there. The words didn't echo. They settled, like something already proven. And in that moment, the case shifted again, from something that had happened, to something that might still be happening. Waiting, watching, just beneath the surface. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. Whatever took her, it's still there. The sentence didn't fade when Mercer said it. It stayed. It followed Hale out of the interrogation room, down the hallway, through the fluorescent glare of the precinct, clinging to every thought that tried to make sense of what was no longer making sense. Because cases don't work like that. They don't reach forward through time. They don't wait. They don't continue. But something about this one refused to stay buried. By 2:17 a.m., Hale was standing at the edge of Riverside Park. 34 years later. Same river. Same stretch of path. Different city. The skyline had changed. The lighting had improved. Surveillance cameras dotted the perimeter now, blinking silently in the dark. But the deeper sections of the park, the parts closer to the water, the parts where the city thinned out, those hadn't changed as much. Not where it mattered. The same quiet that wasn't really quiet. Hale stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. Then he walked, down the path, past the benches, toward the exact location marked in the original case file. The bench had been replaced years ago. New wood, new bolts, cleaner lines. But the position was identical. Facing the river, unobstructed view, a place to sit, or to wait. Forensics had already secured the area earlier that evening. A small team moved carefully around the perimeter, lights low, voices quieter than usual. Not out of fear, out of instinct, because even without saying it, something about this place demanded it. Hale approached the lead technician. Anything, he asked. The technician hesitated. Just for a second. Nothing conclusive, she said. Ground been disturbed too many times over the years. Foot traffic, weather, erosion. Hale nodded. Expected. But she added. Hale looked at her. But what? She glanced toward the bench. There's something you should see. They walked together. Slow. Measured. The beam of her flashlight cut across the surface of the bench, highlighting clean wood grain, minor scratches, the usual wear of something that had existed in public space for years. Then she angled the light slightly, and it changed. Subtle. But there, a darker patch along the center slat. Irregular. Faint. But visible. What is that? Hale asked. We don't know yet, she said. We ran a preliminary test. And she didn't answer immediately. It's moisture, she said finally. Hale's expression didn't change. But it hasn't rained in 3 days, she added. The words settled slowly, because they didn't fit, just like before. Condensation, Hale suggested. She shook her head. Not in these conditions, and not localized like that. Hale stepped closer. It would look dry at first glance, but under the light the difference was there. Subtle, uneven, like something had been there, or still was. When was this found, he asked. About 40 minutes ago. Hale checked his watch. That meant it hadn't been there earlier, or it hadn't been noticed. Either option was a problem. Collect samples, he said. Already in progress. Hale nodded once, then turned toward the river. It moved. Slow. Steady. Normal. But Mercer's words echoed anyway. It wasn't moving. Hale stepped closer to the edge, boots crunching lightly against the gravel. The water reflected the city lights in broken lines, shifting with the current, ordinary in every visible way. And yet, something felt off. Not in a way he could write down. Not in a way he could prove. Just enough to register. Just enough to stay. Detective. Hale turned. Another officer approached, holding a small evidence bag. You need to see this. Hale took it. Inside, a coin. Old. Metal worn smooth at the edges. A subway token. Hale's jaw tightened slightly. Where did you find it? He asked. Near the base of the bench, the officer said. About 6 inches into the soil. That area has been turned over a dozen times, Hale said. Exactly. The implication was immediate. It shouldn't have been there. Not after 34 years. Not after construction, weather, human interference. Unless it hadn't been there before. Hale stared at the token. Same type found in Evelyn Cross's coat. Same era. Same detail. Reappearing. Not discovered. Reappearing. Bag it, he said. The officer nodded. But neither of them moved for a second, because the thought had already formed, and neither wanted to say it first. Hale turned back toward the bench. The moisture, the token, the tape, the breathing, the sound of water that was in the river, all of it pulling in the same direction. Not backward, forward. Something wasn't just being remembered. It was being repeated. Clear the area, Hale said suddenly. The technician looked up. Sir. Clear it, he repeated. Everyone back. Now. There was hesitation. Procedures didn't call for this. Evidence collection wasn't complete. But something in his tone cut through that. Within seconds, the team began to pull back, equipment lifted, lights shifting away from the center of the scene. Hale stayed where he was. Alone now, standing between the bench and the river. Listening. At first, nothing. Just the distant hum of traffic. The soft movement of water. The wind brushing lightly through bare branches. Then, a sound, so faint it almost didn't register. Hale stilled, focused. There was again. Soft, rhythmic. Not the river. Closer, much closer. He turned slowly, toward the bench. The dark patch was still there, but it changed. Not in size, in texture. The light caught it differently now, as if it wasn't just on the surface, as if it had depth. Hale stepped closer. Every instinct told him to stop, to call in, to follow protocol. He didn't. because something about this wasn't waiting for protocol. The sound came again, quieter, but clearer, like liquid shifting inside a confined space. Hale crouched slightly, close enough now to see. Movement, not obvious, not dramatic, just a subtle distortion across the wood, like something pressing upward from beneath it. Hale's breath slowed, controlled, measured. Stay back. A voice called from behind him. He didn't turn, didn't answer, because the moment was already moving. The surface of the bench rippled once, then stopped. The sound ceased instantly. Silence crashed back in. Complete. Absolute. Hale didn't move, didn't breathe. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the patch began to fade. Not evaporate. Not dry. Fade. Like it had never been there. Within moments, the wood returned to normal. Clean. Unmarked. The bench stood as it always had. Ordinary. Harmless. Empty. Hale straightened slowly. His pulse steady. But his mind, not. Because there were no explanations that fit what he had just seen. None that held. None that could be written into a report. Behind him, the team stood frozen. Waiting. Watching. What just happened? The technician asked quietly. Hale didn't answer. Because there was no answer. Not yet. He looked down at the ground where the token had been found. Then back at the bench. Then out at the river. Everything appeared normal. Everything looked exactly as it should. And that was the problem. Because 34 years ago, a woman had stood in this exact place. Spoken words no one fully heard. And vanished without leaving anything behind. Now, the place itself was responding. Not revealing. Responding. As if something had been triggered. As if something had noticed. Hale turned back toward the team. Pack it up, he said. The technician blinked. Sir, we still have. We're done here. Hale cut in. No argument this time. Because they had all seen enough. Or something close enough to seeing. As the team began to move, Hale took one last look at the bench. Still. Silent. Empty. But not harmless. Not anymore. Because whatever had happened here in 1987 had just happened again. Not fully. Not completely. But enough. Enough to prove one thing. This wasn't a memory. It wasn't a reconstruction. It wasn't a case being solved. It was something still in motion. Something that didn't follow time the way it should. Something that could reach across decades and touch the present. Hale turned away, but the feeling didn't leave. That quiet pressure, that awareness, like standing too close to something you don't understand. Something that doesn't need to move, to still be there. And as the lights dimmed and the park fell back into darkness, the river kept moving. Slow, steady, unchanged, as if nothing had happened at all. But Hale knew better now, because something had, and whatever it wasn't finished. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. The report didn't make sense. It wasn't that it was incomplete or inconclusive or even contradictory in a way investigators were used to navigating. It was worse than that. It was precise, clean, definitive, and impossible. Detective Marcus Hale read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, as if changing the pace might force the words to rearrange themselves into something reasonable. They didn't. Sample A. Moisture residue collected from bench surface, Riverside Park. Composition, freshwater. No contaminants. No traceable pollutants. No biological markers. No chemical anomalies. Just water. Pure. Untouched. As if it had never passed through a pipe, a system, or even the natural world it was taken from. Hale lowered the report slightly, eyes narrowing. New York City water doesn't look like that. Nothing does. Not after sitting exposed on a public bench in the middle of winter, in a park layered with decades of human presence. There should have been something. Dust, bacteria, residual compounds. Something to anchor it to reality. But there was nothing. The sample wasn't just clean. It was absent of history. Hale set the report down slowly. Because evidence doesn't erase itself. And it doesn't appear without origin. Which meant one thing. The origin wasn't something they understood. Across the room, the forensic analyst waited. You ran this twice? Hale asked, 3 times, she said. Same result. Yes. Hale tapped the paper lightly. No environmental markers at all? None. That's not possible. I know, she replied. But that's what it says. Silence followed. Not confused. Focused. Because cases fall apart when evidence stops behaving like evidence. Run it again, Hale said. We already. Run it again, he repeated. She nodded. But neither of them believed a 4th test would change anything. Because whatever this was, it wasn't an error. It was consistent. And consistency makes things real. Hale left the lab without another word. The hallway outside felt sharper somehow. More defined. Like the edges of things had been pulled into focus. Or maybe he was just seeing them differently. Back in interrogation, Mercer was still there. Same position. Same posture. Like he hadn't moved at all. Hale stepped in, closed the door behind him. No file this time. No photographs. Just the report in his hand. He placed it on the table between them. Tell me about the water, Hale said. Mercer didn't look at the paper. I already did. Tell me again. A pause. Then, it wasn't the river, Mercer said. I told you that. What was it? I don't know. Hale slid the report slightly closer. This says it was fresh water, he said. Pure. No contaminants. Mercer's eyes flicked down briefly. Then back up. That's not right. No, Hale said quietly. It isn't. The tension settled again. Different now. Heavier. Daniel, Hale continued. I went to the park tonight. I got a reaction. Subtle. But there. You found something, Mercer said. Maybe. Hale didn't elaborate. Not yet. I need you to think, he said, about every time you've seen him. Not just 1987. Before. After. All of it. Mercer hesitated. You said there were glimpses, Hale added. Moments you couldn't explain. Mercer nodded slowly. Yeah. When was the last time? The question landed harder than expected. Mercer didn't answer immediately. His gaze dropped. His breathing shifted. Slower. More controlled. Like he was deciding whether to cross a line he couldn't step back from. Daniel, Hale said, sharper now. When was the last time? Last week, Mercer said. The room went still. Hale didn't move. Where? Mercer swallowed. Near the subway, he said. Queens. Doing what? Nothing, Mercer replied. Just standing there. Looking at you? I don't know, Mercer said quickly. I didn't stay long enough to find out. Hale studied him. You ran. Yes. Same pattern. Same response. Decades later. Nothing had changed. Did anyone else see him? Hale asked. I don't think so. Why not? Because no one ever does, Mercer said quietly. Hale let that sit. Because it matched too well. No witnesses. No descriptions. No consistency in form. Just absence. Again. And the gaps. Hale pressed. Still happening? Mercer nodded. More often, he admitted. How often? I don't know, Mercer said. Every few days. Sometimes more. What happens during them? I don't remember. That's not helpful. I know. Mercer snapped, frustration breaking through again. You think I want this? Hale didn't respond. Because emotion doesn't change facts. Daniel, he said instead, what if those gaps aren't random? Mercer froze slightly. What do you mean? What if they're connected? Hale continued. To him. To the disappearances. That doesn't make sense. Neither does anything else, Hale said flatly. Silence. Again. But now it wasn't just tension. It was alignment. Pieces beginning to shift toward each other. Uncomfortably. I didn't take anyone, Mercer said suddenly. Hale didn't react. I didn't hurt anyone, Mercer added louder now. You need to understand that. I'm not saying you did. But you think I'm involved. I think you're connected, Hale corrected. The distinction mattered. Even if Mercer didn't want it to. Connected how? Mercer demanded. Hale didn't answer right away. Because the truth. He didn't know yet. But he was getting closer. Let me ask you something, Hale said instead. The night Evelyn disappeared after you ran, are you sure you made it home? Mercer blinked. Confused. What? You said you ran 3 or 4 blocks. Hale continued. You said you didn't stop until you couldn't breathe. Yeah. And then I went home. Directly? Yes. No stops. No. Hale watched him carefully. You're sure? Yes. Too fast. Too certain. Another crack. Daniel, Hale said quietly. What if there's time missing? Mercer's expression shifted. What are you saying? I'm saying your timeline might not be complete, Hale replied. Just like the gaps you've been having. That's not. Think about it, Hale pressed. You run. You don't look back. You don't stop. And then suddenly, you're home. Mercer didn't respond. Do you remember unlocking the door? Hale asked. Silence. Do you remember going inside? Nothing. Do you remember anything between the park and your apartment? Mercer's breathing changed again. Faster now. Uneven. Like the tape. Like the beginning. I don't know, he said. The first crack. Real. Uncontrolled. Hale leaned forward slightly. Daniel, what if you didn't leave when you think you did? Mercer shook his head. No. What if you stayed longer? No. What if you went back? I didn't, Mercer said sharply. But it didn't hold. Because the doubt was already there. Visible. Spreading. You lied about something earlier, Hale said. Mercer looked up. What? You said you never went back to Riverside, Hale continued. I didn't. Hale held his gaze. Are you sure? The question hung there. Heavy. Mercer didn't answer. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure. And that uncertainty changed everything. Because if Mercer had gone back, if there were gaps in his memory, if there were moments unaccounted for, then he wasn't just a witness. He was part of the timeline, part of the sequence, part of whatever had been happening. Daniel, Hale said quietly, I need you to be honest with me. Mercer's voice dropped. I am. No, Hale said. You're trying to be. The difference landed. Sharp. Unavoidable. Close your eyes, Hale said. Mercer hesitated. Do it. Slowly, reluctantly, Mercer complied. Go back to that night, Hale said. After you ran. After you turned away from the river. Mercer's breathing steadied slightly. Tell me what you see. A pause. Long. Then. Dark, Mercer said. Keep going. I'm walking. Running. No. Mercer said slowly. Not anymore. Hale didn't interrupt. Where are you? He asked. Mercer's brow tightened. I don't know, he said. It's not the street. It's quieter. Hale's focus sharpened. Describe it. I can't see much, Mercer said. Just shapes. Keep going. Another pause. Then. I'm back, Mercer whispered. Hale didn't move. Back where? Mercer's voice cracked. At the bench. The room went silent. Because that changed everything. You said you didn't go back, Hale said quietly. I didn't, Mercer said, but the certainty was gone. Then how are you there? I don't know. Look around, Hale said. Mercer's breathing quickened. I don't want to. Do it. A long pause. Then. He's there, Mercer said. Hale's voice dropped. Where? In front of me. Same as before? Yes. Can you see him? No. Is Evelyn there? Silence. Longer this time. Heavy. And then. No, Mercer said. Hale's jaw tightened. What are you doing? He asked. Mercer's hands trembled. I'm standing still, he said. I can't move. Why not? I don't know. Try. I can't. The words came out strained now. Tight. Like something was pressing down. Daniel, Hale said, sharper now, what happens next? Mercer's breathing broke. Fast. Uneven. I don't know, he said. I don't remember. And then he stopped. Mid-sentence. Mid-breath. His body went still. Completely. Hale leaned forward instantly. Daniel? No response. Daniel? Nothing. Eyes open. Unblinking. Fixed on something that wasn't in the room. Hale stood up sharply. Daniel? Still nothing. For a moment. It was like he wasn't there. Like something had interrupted. And then, Mercer blinked. Once. Sharp. Sudden. Air rushed back into his lungs. He gasped. Hale didn't move. What just happened? He demanded. Mercer looked around. Disoriented. Confused. I don't know, he said. And for the first time since this started, Hale believed him. Because whatever had just happened, it wasn't memory. It wasn't recall. It wasn't acting. It was something else. Something immediate. Something real. And it had just happened. Right in front of him. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. For a few seconds, No one spoke. Not because there wasn't anything to say, but because whatever had just happened didn't fit into anything they could explain. Daniel Mercer sat in the chair, breathing hard, eyes darting around the room like he had just surfaced from somewhere deep, somewhere he hadn't meant to go. Detective Marcus Hale didn't move. He watched, measured, because reactions matter. And this wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't something a man could fake on command. What do you remember? Hale asked, voice low, steady. Mercer shook his head slowly. I was here, he said. Then I wasn't. Where were you? I don't know, Mercer replied, frustration creeping in. It's like it cuts out. 1 second, I'm talking the next. He stopped, because even he couldn't finish that sentence. Hale stepped closer to the table, placing both hands flat against its surface. Daniel, listen to me carefully, he said. When you stopped responding just now, you were still here. Physically, but you weren't aware of anything around you. Mercer swallowed. I didn't hear you, he admitted. I know. Silence. Heavy. Has that ever happened before? Hale asked. Mercer didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. How many times? Hale pressed. I don't know, Mercer said. A few, maybe more. When? Recently, he said. Last month. Maybe earlier this week. And you didn't think that was important to mention? I didn't think it mattered, Mercer snapped, but the edge in his voice was cracking now. It's just blackouts. People have them. Not like that, Hale said. Because this wasn't a blackout. This was interruption. Sudden. Clean. Precise. Like something had been switched off. And then back on. Did you see anything while you were gone? Hale asked. Mercer shook his head. No. No images. No sounds. Nothing. Mercer insisted. It's just gone. Hale studied him, then slowly pulled his chair back and sat down again. Because pushing harder now wouldn't help. Not yet. You said something before it happened, Hale said, about being back at the bench. Mercer's expression tightened. I remember that part. And after? Mercer shook his head. Nothing. Hale nodded once, then reached into his pocket and placed a small object on the table. The subway token. Mercer's eyes dropped to it instantly. Recognition. Immediate. You found it, he said. Yes. Where? Near the bench. Mercer leaned back slightly. That's not possible. That's what I said, Hale replied. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was alignment. Pieces connecting, whether they wanted them to or not. That wasn't there before, Mercer said slowly. No, Hale agreed. It wasn't. Then how? That's the question. Hale let that sit. Because sometimes the absence of an answer says more than anything else. Daniel, he said after a moment, I need to understand your timeline. Mercer looked up. What do you mean? Your life, Hale clarified. Since 1987, where you've been, what you've done, anything that might connect you to the other cases. I already told you. You told me pieces, Hale cut in. Now I want all of it. Mercer hesitated, then exhaled slowly. I stayed in New York, he said. Mostly. Moved a few times. Same kind of work. Maintenance. Nothing unusual. Any gaps? Hale asked. Mercer frowned. What? Periods of time you can't account for, Hale said. Days. Weeks. Longer. Mercer shook his head at first, then stopped, because the thought had already landed. I don't know, he said. Think, Hale pressed. Mercer's gaze drifted again. Not to the past. To something closer. More recent. There was a time, he said slowly. Late 90s, maybe. I missed work. A few days. How many? 3. Maybe 4. And you don't remember where you were? No, Mercer admitted. I thought I was sick. That's why I told myself. But you're not sure. No. Hale nodded. Anything else? Mercer hesitated again. Then, 2012, he said. Same thing. Just gone. A weekend I can't remember. Hale's mind worked quickly. Patterns. Intervals. Occurrences. Daniel, he said, voice tightening slightly. Those dates, do they mean anything to you? No. Nothing at all? No. Hale didn't respond, because he already knew what he was going to check next. Other cases. Other disappearances. Other dates. If they lined up, then Mercer wasn't just connected. He was part of something repeating, something structured, something that didn't rely on memory. Look at me, Hale said. Mercer did. Do you think you could have hurt someone? Hale asked. The question hit hard. Direct. Unavoidable. No, Mercer said immediately. But there was hesitation beneath it. Small. But there. You're not sure, Hale said. I would know, Mercer insisted. Would you? Hale countered. If you don't remember entire blocks of time? Mercer didn't answer. Because that was the problem. That was the crack everything was starting to slip through. I didn't kill her, Mercer said again. Hale didn't respond. Because at this point, that wasn't the only possibility. Daniel, he said instead. What if this isn't about what you did? Mercer frowned. What do you mean? What if it's about where you were? Hale said, or what you were during those gaps. That doesn't make any sense. Neither does anything else, Hale said flatly. Silence. Again. But now it wasn't resistance. It was fear. Real. Unfiltered. Something happens to me during those times, Mercer said quietly. Hale didn't interrupt. I just don't know what. Hale leaned back slightly. Because that was the closest thing to truth they had so far. Not certainty. Not clarity. Just proximity. You said earlier, Hale continued, that you've seen him recently. Mercer nodded. Near the subway. Yes. What time? Late, Mercer said. After midnight. Alone. I think so. You think, Hale repeated. Mercer's jaw tightened. I didn't stay long enough to check. Did you feel again? Hale asked. That presence. Mercer nodded slowly. Yeah. Same as before? Yes. Hale studied him carefully. Because if Mercer was telling the truth, then whatever had been in Riverside Park in 1987 was still appearing, still interacting, still choosing moments, which meant it wasn't random. It wasn't finished. Daniel, Hale said quietly, what if you're not just seeing him? Mercer's eyes flicked up. What? What if he's seeing you? Hale continued. The room tightened instantly. That doesn't make sense, Mercer said. Doesn't it? Hale pressed. You're there in 1987. You witnessed something no one else can describe. You experienced gaps in time. And decades later, you're still encountering the same figure. That doesn't mean. It means you're connected, Hale said. Whether you want to be or not. Mercer didn't respond. Because the logic was closing in. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. Why me? Mercer asked finally. Hale didn't answer. Because that question. That was the one they couldn't solve yet. But it mattered. More than anything else. Let me ask you something, Hale said instead. When you see him, does he react to you? Mercer hesitated. Then nodded. Sometimes. How? He pauses, Mercer said. Like he notices. Notices what? Me. The words settled heavily. Because that meant interaction. Not passive observation. Not coincidence. Recognition. Hale's expression hardened slightly. And when that happens, he asked. Mercer's voice dropped. The gaps get worse. Silence. Total. Because that connected everything. The sightings. The time loss. The episodes. All of it tied together. Not separate symptoms. One system. One pattern. One process. Daniel, Hale said carefully, I need you to understand something. Mercer looked up. If this is connected to the disappearances, if what happened to Evelyn Cross is part of the same pattern, then we're not just dealing with something in the past. Mercer didn't speak. We're dealing with something ongoing. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Unstable. And right now, Hale continued, you might be the only person who can see it coming. Mercer's face drained slightly. I don't want that, he said. I don't think you get a choice. Silence again. But now it was different. Because the case had shifted. Completely. From investigation. To anticipation. From solving something that happened. To trying to stop something that might happen again. Daniel, Hale said quietly, when you see him next. Mercer didn't let him finish. I won't, he said quickly. I'll stay away. I'll go somewhere else. Hale shook his head slowly. That hasn't worked so far. Mercer's breathing picked up again. You don't understand, he said. Then explain it. Mercer hesitated. Long. Then. He doesn't follow me, he said. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean? Mercer looked up. And for the first time since this began, there was something else in his expression. Not just fear, not confusion, recognition. He doesn't follow me, Mercer repeated. A beat. I think I'm the one who keeps finding him. The words settled into the room like a final piece sliding into place. Because that changed everything. Not a predator hunting randomly. Not a presence drifting through space. Something else. Something that aligned. That intersected. That appeared. At the exact point where Mercer was. Which meant the connection wasn't external. It wasn't distance. It wasn't location. It was him. And if that was true, then the next disappearance wouldn't be random. It would be close. Very close. And this time, they might not get a second chance to understand it. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. The pattern wasn't supposed to exist. That was the first thought Detective Marcus Hale had when the analysis came back. Not confusion. Not surprise. Recognition. Because patterns imply order. And order implies something behind it. Something shaping events with intent. And this one was too precise to ignore. He stood in the forensic office, the report open on the screen in front of him, the glow of it reflecting in his eyes like something unfinished trying to form itself. Mercer's timeline, overlaid with the cold case disappearances. 1985, Lena Hart. 1986, Caroline Weiss. 1987, Evelyn Cross. And then Mercer. Always Mercer. Not in the sense of presence, but in the sense of absence. Every disappearance aligned within a margin of hours where Mercer's personal records, work logs, employment timestamps, witness gaps, showed missing or unverified activity. At first, it looked like coincidence. Until it didn't. Because coincidence doesn't repeat itself with mathematical precision. Hale scrolled further. Another layer. 2012. Late October. Weekend gap in Mercer's employment records. That date intersected with a previously unlinked missing persons report from Queens. Unsolved. Unrecorded in the original cold case archive because it didn't match the Riverside profile. But now, it did. Hale exhaled slowly, because the shape of it was becoming unavoidable. Not a series of unrelated disappearances. A cycle. He closed the file and stood up. The building felt different tonight. Quieter. Like the usual background noise of the precinct had thinned out, leaving space for something else to settle in. He didn't like that feeling, but he didn't ignore it either. When he returned to interrogation, Mercer was sitting in the same position as before. Still. Too still. Like he hadn't moved at all since Hale left. That alone would have been enough to make any experienced detective pause. But Hale had moved past pause. Your timeline doesn't exist in isolation, Hale said as he entered. Mercer looked up. Tired. More than before. What does that mean, he asked. Hale placed the report on the table. Everything you told me. Your gaps, your sightings, your encounters. They line up with multiple disappearance windows. Mercer frowned slightly. I don't understand. You don't need to, Hale said. Just listen. Silence. Then Hale continued. Lena Hart disappears in 1985. You have no record of your location for 12 hours during that exact period. Mercer blinked. That doesn't prove anything. It's one case, Hale said. Then he placed another file down. Caroline Weiss. 1986. Same pattern. Same gap. Mercer leaned forward slightly. That could still be coincidence. Hale didn't respond immediately. Then placed a third file down. Evelyn Cross. 1987. Mercer stared at it longer this time. The silence stretched. Hale watched him carefully, because this was the moment where people either broke away from the pattern or fell into it. You're saying I was there, Mercer said quietly. I'm saying you were unaccounted for, Hale corrected. During every known instance of these disappearances. That's not the same thing. No, Hale agreed. But it's not nothing either. Mercer leaned back slowly. His hands trembled slightly now. For the first time, Hale noticed it wasn't just fear anymore. It was calculation. Like Mercer was trying to reconstruct his own existence from pieces that didn't fit together. I don't remember any of that, Mercer said. I know. So what are you saying? Mercer asked. that I'm doing this? Hale didn't answer immediately, because that wasn't the conclusion. Not yet. I'm saying, Hale said carefully, that every time something happens near Riverside Park, you're there in some form. Mercer shook his head. That's impossible. Is it? Hale asked quietly. Mercer didn't respond, because the word impossible had been losing meaning in this case for a long time now. Hale leaned forward slightly. Daniel, he said, there's something else. Mercer looked up. The shift in tone was immediate. Sharper. What? Hale hesitated, then placed a final document on the table. A map. Red markings. Clusters. Dates. And Mercer's known locations overlaid. At first glance, it looked chaotic, until it didn't, because it was a curve forming. Not random, not scattered, but directional, always returning, always converging. To one point, Riverside Park. Mercer stared at it for a long time, long enough that Hale could see the moment realization began to form. No, Mercer said quietly. Yes, Hale replied. That's not real. It's data. It's wrong. It's consistent, Hale corrected. Mercer shook his head. No, I don't go there that often. You don't have to, Hale said. The pattern doesn't require constant presence, just alignment. Mercer stood up suddenly, chair scraping back. That's not me, he said. That's not possible. Sit down, Hale said firmly. But Mercer didn't. His breathing was faster now, uneven. I don't do this, he said. I don't hurt people. I don't even. You don't remember what you do, Hale interrupted. That stopped him, not physically, but mentally, because that sentence changed the direction of everything. Mercer looked at him, eyes wide now. What are you saying? He asked, voice lower. Hale held his gaze. I'm saying, he said slowly, that during your gaps you may not be Mercer. The room went silent. Total. Immediate. Mercer's expression didn't change at first, like the words hadn't fully reached him. Then, what? He whispered. Hale didn't soften it. Your identity doesn't appear stable across those missing periods, he said. Different behaviors, different locations, no continuity. That doesn't mean. It means, Hale cut in, that something is happening during those gaps that isn't just memory loss. Mercer shook his head slowly. No. Yes, Hale said. Mercer stepped back slightly, like distance could undo the implication. You're wrong, he said. I'm not guessing, Hale replied. I'm reading the data. Mercer's breathing quickened again. This is insane, he said. I agree, Hale said calmly. But it's consistent. Silence again. But now it was collapsing inward. Because if Mercer wasn't just forgetting, then the question wasn't what happened during the gaps. It was who was there instead. You think there's someone else inside me? Mercer said slowly. Hale didn't answer immediately, because even saying it aloud felt like crossing a threshold. I think, Hale said carefully, that whatever is connected to these disappearances uses proximity. Mercer stared at him. Uses? Hale nodded. And you're the consistent point. Mercer shook his head harder. No, that's not. You said it yourself, Hale interrupted. You don't follow him. He appears where you are. Mercer froze. Hale continued. What if that's because you're not the one moving between events? Mercer's voice dropped. Then what am I? Hale held his gaze. I don't know yet. Silence. Thick. Unbroken. Mercer slowly sat back down. Not because he accepted it, but because standing didn't change anything anymore. His voice came quieter now, almost hollow. So what happens to me during those gaps? He asked. Hale didn't answer immediately, because the honest answer wasn't something he could give yet. But the direction was clear. Something overlaps, Hale said finally. Mercer frowned slightly. Overlaps what? Time, Hale said. The word hung there. Uncomfortable. Unstable. Mercer let out a short breath. That's not possible. Hale didn't respond, because by now, possible wasn't part of the case anymore. Mercer looked down at his hands, then slowly whispered. Then what happened to Evelyn? Hale didn't hesitate this time. That's what we're trying to understand. Mercer shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly. That's not what I mean. Hale watched him. Mercer looked up again, and for the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not confusion, not fear, Recognition. I think she saw it too, Mercer said. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. Saw what? Mercer swallowed. The gap, he said. Silence returned. Instant. Absolute. Because that changed the direction again. Not just Mercer. Not just the pattern. But the victims. Hale leaned forward slowly. Explain. Mercer's voice dropped. She wasn't just disappearing, he said. She was noticing something. Hale didn't speak. And whatever she saw, Mercer continued, it made her stop running. The room felt colder again. Daniel, Hale said carefully, what did she see? Mercer hesitated, then whispered, me. And for the first time, Hale realized this case wasn't about a disappearance anymore. It was about recognition, between 2 points that shouldn't exist at the same time, and something that kept bringing them together. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. She wasn't just disappearing, she was noticing something. The words from Mercer didn't fade when the room went quiet. They settled in layers like dust that refused to be brushed away. Detective Marcus Hale felt it immediately, not as a theory, not as interpretation, but as a shift in direction. Because up until now, everything had been about absence. Missing time, missing people, missing evidence. But Mercer had just introduced something else. Awareness. And that changed everything. Hale didn't speak right away. He turned instead toward the audio technician standing near the door. Run the enhanced tape again, he said. The technician hesitated. We already processed it twice. Again, Hale repeated. No argument this time. Within minutes, they were back in the audio lab. The same tape. The same fragile recording from 1987. The same breath at the beginning. But this time, Hale wasn't listening for Mercer anymore. He was listening for Evelyn. The file played. Static first, then the faint inhale, then the voice. I didn't mean for her to disappear. Hale leaned closer. Boost low-frequency background, he said. The technician adjusted the settings. The sound shifted slightly. The static thinned. And something else emerged. Not clear, not fully formed, but present. Another layer beneath the voice. A second rhythm. Hale froze. Stop, he said. The technician paused the playback. Hale stared at the waveform on the screen. 2 patterns. One consistent, one irregular. The irregular one wasn't noise. It was speech. Compressed. Distorted. But structured. Can you isolate it? Hale asked. The technician frowned. I can try. Minutes passed. The room felt tighter with every adjustment. Then, the audio shifted again, and suddenly, the second layer became clearer. Not perfect, but undeniable. A second voice. Hale's expression changed instantly. That's not Mercer, he said. No, the technician replied quietly. It's not. Hale leaned forward. Play it. The tape resumed. Static. Breath. Then Evelyn's voice again, followed by silence. And underneath, a second voice. Low. Fragmented. But there. Hale's stomach tightened, because the structure of it didn't match anything natural. It wasn't interference. It wasn't echo. It was response. Like 2 voices occupying the same moment, but not the same space. Separate channels, the technician said, but they shouldn't overlap like this. Hale didn't respond. He was listening too closely now. And then, a word emerged. Barely. Don't. Cut. Static spike. Then Evelyn again. Please don't do this. And underneath, the second voice responded. Not clearly, but unmistakably. A reply. Hale stepped back slightly. Because that shouldn't be possible. Not on analog tape. Not with 1987 recording equipment. Not with a single recorded session. Is this artifacting? He asked. The technician shook her head slowly. I've never seen this pattern before, she said. It's like simultaneous capture. Meaning, she hesitated. Like 2 audio sources were recorded in the same space, but not at the same time. Silence. Hale looked at the screen again. The waveform pulsed. Irregular, but stable, which meant it wasn't corruption. It was structure. Enhance Evelyn's channel, Hale said. The technician isolated the upper layer. The voice sharpened. More recognizable now. Fragments aligning into meaning. And then, Something impossible. A second phrase. From Evelyn. Not previously logged. Not heard in any official transcription. I can see you. Hale went still. Replay that, he said immediately. The technician did. Same segment. Same phrase. I can see you. Hale stepped closer. That wasn't in the original transcript, he said. No, the technician confirmed. It wasn't picked up before. Hale looked at her. Why now? She hesitated. I don't know, she said. But it's clean. That's not background bleed. That's actual speech. Hale turned back to the screen. Because that phrase, it changed everything. Evelyn wasn't just speaking before she disappeared. She was speaking during something else. Something overlapping. He leaned in. Isolate the second voice again. The technician complied. Static deepened. Then, the second voice returned. Still unclear. Still fractured. But closer now. And then, a phrase emerged. Not fully formed. But enough. Stay where you are. Hale's breath slowed. Because that wasn't passive recording. That was instruction. Response. Interaction. Between 2 points in the same moment. Who is speaking? He asked quietly. The technician didn't answer. Because there was no way to answer that cleanly anymore. Hale stared at the waveform. 2 layers. One voice from Evelyn Cross. One unidentified. But both captured in the same file. The same second. The same moment. Except, they weren't synchronized. They were misaligned. Like time itself wasn't matching inside the recording. Hale stepped back. No, he said quietly. The technician looked up. What? This doesn't work, Hale said. What doesn't? This is one recording, he said. One tape. One moment. One device. Yes. So how is their response? Hale asked. Silence. Because there was no answer that fit physics. Not cleanly. Not all. Hale turned off the playback. The room fell silent again. But not empty. Not anymore. Because now there was evidence of interaction. Not assumption. Not interpretation. Interaction. Between Evelyn Cross. And something else. Back in interrogation, Mercer was still waiting. Hale returned without the file. Just the weight of what he had heard. Mercer looked up immediately. You found something? He said. Hale didn't respond right away. Then he placed a single headphone on the table. Listen, he said. Mercer hesitated. Slowly put on. Hale played the isolated audio. Evelyn's voice first. Then the second layer. Mercer's expression shifted almost instantly. Confusion. Then discomfort. Then something deeper. Recognition. Hale watched carefully. Because reactions mattered more than words now. When the playback ended, Mercer slowly removed the headphones. His hand was shaking slightly. That's not possible, he said. Hale didn't answer. That's not me, Mercer added quickly. Hale studied him. You're sure? Yes, Mercer said immediately. Too fast. Too defensive. Hale didn't push. Instead, he asked something else. Then who is it? Mercer froze. Because there was no answer that didn't collapse everything. I don't know, he said finally. But his voice lacked conviction now. Because something had shifted. Something irreversible. Hale leaned forward slightly. Daniel, he said quietly, you recognize that voice, don't you? Mercer shook his head. No, but he didn't look up. That hesitation, Hale said. That's new. Mercer swallowed. I said no. Hale didn't respond immediately. Because now there was something else. A fracture. Not in the evidence. Not in the tape. In Mercer. You said Evelyn saw you, Hale said slowly. Mercer didn't respond. But what if, Hale continued, she wasn't seeing you as you are now? Mercer looked up. Carefully. What do you mean? What if she saw you during one of the gaps? Silence. Because that question opened a door neither of them had fully considered. If that voice on the tape is real, Hale said, then Evelyn wasn't alone when she disappeared. Mercer's breathing slowed. She was interacting with something. Mercer shook his head slightly. No. Yes, Hale said, and she recognized it. Mercer's voice dropped. Recognized what? Hale held his gaze. You. The room went completely still. Because if that was true, then the case wasn't about disappearance anymore. It was about overlap. Between identities. Between moments. Between something that shouldn't coexist. Mercer leaned back slowly, his voice barely audible. I don't remember that, he said. Hale nodded slightly. I know. A pause. Then Hale added, but something did, and in that moment, the investigation stopped being about what happened in 1987 and started becoming about what was still happening now. Inside Mercer, inside the tape, inside the gaps, and somewhere, still watching. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. You recognize that voice, don't you? The question didn't leave the room when Hale said it. It stayed suspended in the air, like it had attached itself to something deeper than conversation. Daniel Mercer sat motionless, eyes fixed on a point somewhere between the table and nothing at all. Because silence, in cases like this, isn't empty. It's loaded, and Mercer was starting to feel the weight of it. I don't remember that, he said again, but his voice was thinner now, less certain, less anchored. Detective Marcus Hale didn't press immediately. He watched instead, the way Mercer's fingers twitched, the way his breathing didn't fully settle, the way his gaze kept drifting as if something in the room was trying to pull him somewhere else, somewhere not present. That was new, or maybe it had always been there, and they were only now learning how to see it. Hale placed a small recorder on the table. Not the tape from 1987. A new one. Clean. Controlled. This is a reconstruction protocol, Hale said quietly. Mercer frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means we're going to try to map one of your missing intervals, Hale replied. Mercer shook his head immediately. No. Hale didn't react. We're not going into your memory, he continued. We're isolating the conditions around it. That's the same thing, Mercer said quickly. No, Hale said. It's not. But Mercer didn't look convinced. Because anything involving his missing time had already started to feel like stepping towards something he couldn't come back from. You said your gaps are increasing, Hale added. Mercer didn't respond. You said last week it happened again, Hale continued. That you lost time. A pause. Mercer nodded slightly. Yes. So we're going to isolate what happens just before it, Hale said. And just after. Mercer shifted in his chair. That's dangerous. Everything in this case is dangerous, Hale replied. Silence. Then Hale leaned forward slightly. You said earlier, he continued, that you sometimes find yourself places without knowing how you got there. Mercer's jaw tightened. Yes. This is how we map it. Mercer looked down, then slowly shook his head. I don't think you understand what happens when it starts. Hale didn't respond immediately. I think I'm beginning to, he said. That didn't comfort Mercer. It made him more uneasy. The technician adjusted the recorder. Low-frequency sensors engaged. Environmental calibration began. The room dimmed slightly as the system activated. Not physically, but perceptually, like attention itself was narrowing. Daniel, Hale said, I want you to think about the last gap. Mercer hesitated. I don't want to. I know, Hale said, but do it anyway. Silence. Then Mercer closed his eyes. The room shifted with him. Not literally, but something about attention changed. Focus tightened. Where were you before it happened? Hale asked. Mercer's breathing slowed. I was walking, he said. Where? I don't remember exactly. Try. Mercer frowned slightly. Near my apartment, he said. And after? A pause. Long. I don't know. Hale watched him carefully. Stay with the moment before it. Mercer's breathing deepened slightly. I was crossing the street, he said. Anything unusual? No. Sounds? Mercer hesitated. Then, yes. Hale leaned forward slightly. What kind of sound? Mercer frowned harder. Like water, he said. The technician glanced at Hale. Hale didn't react. Continue, he said. It wasn't the river, Mercer added quickly. It was closer. Wrong somehow. Wrong how? I don't know, Mercer said. It didn't belong there. Silence. Then, Hale nodded to the technician. Begin capture. The recorder activated fully. Environmental field open. Mercer kept his eyes closed. And then, the room changed. Not visibly, but in tone, like something had entered the boundary of perception. Mercer stiffened slightly. Hale noticed immediately. Daniel, he said quietly. Mercer didn't respond. Daniel, Still nothing. His breathing slowed. Too much. Too controlled. The technician leaned forward. Signal fluctuation increasing, she said quietly. Hale's eyes narrowed. Keep recording. Mercer's head tilted slightly. Subtle. Like listening. But not to them. Something else. Daniel, Hale said more firmly. Mercer's lips parted slightly. But no words came. Instead, a faint sound emerged from the recorder. Not part of Mercer's voice. Not part of the room. Something layered underneath. Hale froze. Enhance input, he said quickly. The technician adjusted settings. The sound sharpened. And then, it became clear. Water. Soft. Contained. But not from outside. From within the recording. Mercer's breathing suddenly stopped. Completely. Hale stood up instantly. Daniel. No response. Mercer sat perfectly still. Eyes closed. But not asleep. Not unconscious. Absent. The technician looked up sharply. He's not registering verbal response, she said. Hale stepped closer. Daniel, he repeated. Still nothing. Then, a second sound emerged. Different. Not water this time. A voice. Faint. Distorted. But unmistakably structured. Hale's stomach tightened. Because it wasn't Mercer's voice. And it wasn't Evelyn's. It was something else. Something overlapping. Stop the recording, Hale said sharply. But before the technician could, Mercer inhaled sharply. As if surfacing. His eyes snapped open. He gasped once. Hard. Violent. Like he'd been pulled back from somewhere deep. Daniel. Hale said immediately. Mercer blinked rapidly. Confused. Disoriented. He started. Then stopped. His gaze shifted around the room. Faster now. Where am I? He asked. Hale didn't answer immediately. Precinct, he said. Mercer frowned. No, he said quickly. I was. He stopped again. His expression tightened. Like something was slipping. I was somewhere else, he said. The technician looked at Hale. Hale didn't respond. Did you hear anything? Hale asked. Mercer shook his head quickly. No, nothing at all. Mercer hesitated. Then, I heard water, he said. Hale's eyes narrowed. And Mercer blinked. I think someone was talking. Who? Mercer shook his head. I don't know. Try. Mercer closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them again. Frustration rising. I can't, he said. It's gone. Hale studied him carefully. Because this wasn't just missing memory anymore. This was disconnection. Clean. Immediate. Like something had cut the link entirely. You were unresponsive for 47 seconds, the technician said quietly. Mercer looked at her. What? You stopped responding, she repeated. Mercer shook his head. That's not possible. It happened, Hale said. Mercer looked at him. Fear creeping in again. I don't remember any of it, he said. Hale didn't respond immediately. Because that matched too closely with everything else. The gaps. The disappearances. The tape. The river anomaly. All of it. Mercer stood up suddenly. No more, he said. Hale didn't move. What? No more of this, Mercer repeated. I'm not doing it again. You don't have a choice, Hale said calmly. Mercer shook his head harder. You don't understand, he said. Something happens when I do that. Something. He stopped. Because he couldn't define it. Hale stepped forward slightly. What happens? Mercer looked at him. And for the first time, his voice wasn't just fear. It was certainty. I leave, he said. Silence. Hale didn't respond immediately. What do you mean? He asked quietly. Mercer shook his head. I don't stay here, he said. I go somewhere else. That's not possible. It is, Mercer insisted. It already happened. Hale studied him. Where do you go? Mercer hesitated. Then whispered. I don't think it's aware. Silence. Because that changed everything again. Not location. Not memory. Displacement. Hale looked at the technician. She looked back. Neither of them spoke. Because now the case had reached a point where every answer created a larger question. And Mercer, standing in the center of it, was no longer just a witness, or a suspect, or even a connection. He was becoming the point where everything overlapped. And whatever was happening was getting closer, not in distance, but in him. New York 1987 cold case reopened. Unexpected confession stuns investigators. I don't think it's aware. The words Mercer had spoken didn't leave the room. They stayed, suspended, like a final equation that refused to resolve. Detective Marcus Hale stood still, watching him carefully, as if any sudden movement might disturb something already unstable. Because by now, nothing about this case behaved normally. Not evidence, not memory, not time. Mercer sat back down slowly, almost involuntarily, like the act of standing had cost him something he couldn't immediately recover. His breathing was uneven again, but not panicked, not confused, different, detached, like something in him had shifted just slightly out of alignment. Hill didn't sit. Not yet. Explain, he said quietly. Mercer looked up, and for a moment, there was hesitation. Not fear this time. Recognition. I think, Mercer said slowly, it's the same place, just not the same time. Silence. Total. The technician at the console didn't move. Even the ambient hum of the building seemed to fade slightly, as if the room itself was trying to process what had just been said. Hale finally spoke. You're describing overlap again. Mercer nodded faintly. Yes. And when you say you leave, I don't move, Mercer interrupted. I shift. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. Shift where? Mercer shook his head. I don't choose it, he said. It happens when it starts. When what starts? Mercer hesitated. Then, the water, he said quietly. The room tightened. Hale stepped closer. Explain the water. Mercer looked down at his hands. When I hear it, he said, it's like something opens. Not physically, just wrongness. Like the space isn't holding together anymore. And then, Hale pressed. I'm not here, Mercer said. Silence. Hale didn't respond immediately, because that statement wasn't metaphorical anymore. It was structural. You said earlier, Hale continued carefully, that Evelyn Cross saw you. Mercer nodded slowly. Yes. And you remember her voice? Yes. And the tape. Mercer's expression tightened. Has both of you on it, he finished. Hale nodded. Then tell me this, he said. If both of you are present in the same moment, why does only one of you remain consistent across time? Mercer didn't answer immediately. Then, because she didn't leave, he said. Hale frowned slightly. What do you mean? Mercer looked up. She stayed where she was, he said. Silence. Then Hale's voice dropped. And you didn't. Mercer nodded. Something almost like resignation passed through him. I think I'm the one that keeps moving, he said quietly. Hale studied him. Not as a suspect now. Not as a witness. But as a variable. Daniel, he said carefully, if what you're saying is true, then the disappearances aren't random. Mercer didn't respond. They're anchored, Hale continued. Mercer looked up slowly. Anchored to what? He asked. Hale didn't answer immediately, because the answer had been forming for hours. Days. Since the first return to Riverside Park. Since the moisture. Since the tape. Since the moment Mercer stopped responding during reconstruction. Anchored to you, Hale said finally. Silence again. But this one was different. Heavier. Final in tone. Mercer didn't deny it. He didn't react. He just stared at Hale. Like the idea wasn't new. Only confirmed. That's not possible, the technician said quietly. But no one looked at her, because they were past that stage. Mercer leaned forward slightly. If I'm the anchor, he said slowly, then what happens when I'm not there? Hale's expression tightened. I don't know yet. Mercer nodded, as if that answer made too much sense. And Evelyn? Mercer asked quietly. Hale paused, then answered. She's still part of the pattern. Mercer's voice dropped. Or she's still there. Silence. The kind that doesn't wait to be filled. Hale stepped closer. Daniel, he said, I need you to understand something. Mercer looked up. If what we've seen is accurate, if the audio, the gaps, the field anomalies are real, then we're not dealing with memory loss. Mercer didn't respond. We're dealing with displacement, Hale continued, between moments that are overlapping but not synchronized. Mercer swallowed slowly. And the disappearances? He asked. Hale hesitated. Our point of transfer, he said. Silence. Mercer leaned back slightly. So I'm moving people, he said quietly. Hale didn't answer immediately, because that wasn't fully accurate. But it wasn't fully wrong either. I think, Hale said carefully, you're part of the mechanism. Mercer closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Then it's still happening, he said. Hale nodded slowly. Yes. A long pause followed. Then Mercer asked the question neither of them had fully wanted to reach. Can it be stopped? Hale didn't answer immediately, because that question required certainty. And they didn't have it. Not yet. But they had patterns. They had overlap events. They had audio anomalies that defied single-time capture. They had Mercer, unstable, fragmented, yet consistent in one terrifying way. Presence and absence. Always both. I don't know, Hale said finally. Mercer nodded, like he expected that. Then it will happen again, Mercer said. Hale didn't disagree, because the pattern hadn't stopped. It had only been observed. The technician suddenly spoke. The signal spike from earlier, she said quietly. Both men turned. It matched the Riverside readings, she continued. Exactly. Hale looked at her. You mean the bench anomaly? She nodded. And the audio distortion. Silence. Because that meant one thing. The phenomenon wasn't confined to 1987. It was present, still active, still detectable. Hale turned back to Mercer. When was your last gap, he asked. Mercer hesitated. Then, 2 days ago, he said. Hale's expression hardened. Where were you? Mercer shook his head slightly. I don't know. A pause. Then Mercer added quietly. But I think I saw her again. Silence. Total. Hale stepped forward slightly. Evelyn. Mercer nodded. Where? Mercer's voice dropped. Same place. Hale froze slightly. The bench. Mercer shook his head. No, he said. A pause. Long. Then. Here. The room went completely still. The technician stepped back slightly. Hale didn't move. Daniel, he said carefully, that's not possible. Mercer looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't look uncertain. He looked resigned. I didn't bring it here, he said quietly. Silence. But it followed me. The words settled. Heavy. Irreversible. And for the first time in the entire investigation, Hale understood the full implication. The overlap wasn't tied to location. It wasn't tied to the park. It wasn't even tied to history. It was tied to Mercer. And wherever he went, it went too. Hale slowly reached for the radio on his belt, but stopped, because something in the room shifted again. Not visually, not audibly, but perceptually, like the space between them had tightened. Mercer looked down. His breathing slowed. Here it comes again, he whispered. Hale stepped forward instantly. Daniel, but Mercer was already gone. Not physically, not visibly, but in the same way as before. Present, then absent, eyes open, unresponsive. The technician shouted something, but Hale didn't hear it fully. Because the room wasn't stable anymore. A faint sound emerged. Water. Soft. Contained. From nowhere. From everywhere. And beneath it, a second layer. A voice. Not speaking to them. Not speaking at all. Responding. And then, silence. Mercer inhaled sharply. Back. Sudden. Violent. He gasped. I didn't go anywhere, he said immediately. Hale stared at him. But he knew that wasn't true. Not anymore. Because whatever Mercer was, it wasn't contained to one timeline. It wasn't contained to one body. And it wasn't finished. Hale looked at the technician, then back at Mercer, and finally said the only thing left that made sense. Lock the building down. Mercer looked up slowly. Why? He asked. Hale met his eyes. Because whatever is attached to you has just followed us home. And this time, it knows where we are.